Attorney Bivik.
Yes, ma'am.
Are you representing Mr. Ingalls?
Yes, Mr. Eckles, Your Honor.
Eckles. I'm sorry. This is Miss Marshall. Did I miss the entry of appearance?
I think the entries for Vivek, Brubaker, and Prescott. My law partner Suzanne is next to me. We were both partners at the same firm. We both represent Mr. Eckles.
And that's fine. I didn't see an entry of appearance. It didn't print on my calendar. So I'm just confirming an entry was filed.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, perfect. I'll take a look for it. Thank you very much. That's an error. I'll make sure it gets corrected in the clerk's office. Okay. And that way the court will know that he has representation.
Oh, here we go. All right. This is the matter of Taylor Macaluso versus Benjamin Jackson Eckles, 23 FM 8597. So it looks like, let me close that out. Let's see. Let's close this part down. All right, so it looks like there was a complaint for contempt, and that one was looks like on contempt action. That looks like September 27th. Failure to pay uncovered medical expenses, refusing to allow the child to participate in activities, contempt for violating the terms and spirit of the order. That was kind of generally. And then on the 27th, I received an amended complaint. And this was an amended complaint, and there was an emergency attached to it. And this one included the contempt for interfering with the health of the child. That was the emergency part. And so the court then, I think I sent an email, at least I think I requested, indicating that I did not consider it as an emergency, but an urgent issue. And I placed it on this calendar only for that third part of the petition. So I want everybody to understand this is not a full hearing. I am not trying to make any resolutions today. It is simply on the issue of the urgency well, it was titled an emergency, but I'm considering the urgency of the health issue. I want to hear about that. I want you to recognize that I am giving you a small window for this. This is about 30 minutes per side. If I think it might be necessary to go longer than that, I'll let you know. Otherwise, that's what we're doing. So please be mindful of the 30 minutes that you have and use them wisely, because that's the parameters that the court is considering at this juncture, okay? So I understand that we have let's see, I see Miss Macaluso present. I see Mr. Eckles likewise present. Now, who represents Miss Macaluso?
I do, Your Honor. Jessica Fagan.
Miss Fagan. All right, then. And then I overheard there's some concern about who's representing Mr. Eckles, perhaps?
Damon Vivek and Suzanne Prescott here for Mr. Eckles, Your Honor. It appeared that the clerk's office didn't have a copy of our entry of appearance, but I think that's been cleared up.
Okay, great. And then, so I see, and who's sitting next to you, Mr. Vivek, one more time?
This is Miss Suzanne Prescott, my law partner.
Okay, Miss Prescott. Okay, Miss Prescott, I think I saw her name initially on the documents, and then I now see yours as well. Well, on the amended order, yep, we have it noted as Eckles. No, on that one, we sent it to Mr. Eckles directly. Okay, but we got it together.
We're recently retained, Your Honor, so that's probably some of the delay too.
Okay, we've got it. We've taken care of it. So then who's Miss Warren?
That's a witness for us, Your Honor.
Miss Warren is a witness. All right, then I think we got everybody. All right, Miss Fagan, you may proceed.
Sure. Thank you, Your Honor. As you noted, when this was first filed on September 27th, it was rather a run-of-the-mill contempt, right? Dad's not letting the child go to activities, not paying certain things, etc. But then things started to change, Judge. So thank you for offering us this time today. because the evidence is going to show that the party's 9-year-old daughter, Emerson, is suffering from some pretty severe anxiety that's impacting her day to day at the hands of her father. I represent Taylor Macaluso, father Ben Eckles. They were never married, Your Honor, but they do have a daughter. Her name is Emerson, and she is 9 years old. In 2020 was their first order in Fulton County. Now we have a 2022 order in DeKalb County. It was a consent order, Your Honor, and so you probably weren't very familiar, even though you signed off on it. But it was a consent order that gave them joint legal and joint physical, 50-50 schedule. Dad gets Monday, Tuesdays. Mom gets Wednesday, Thursdays, and they alternate the Friday to Monday weekends. What's happened that brought us to filing what we deemed an emergency, but we respect Your Honor's classification of urgent, is that Emerson is not doing well. She's 9 years old and she is having nighttime bedwetting. She is refusing to sleep alone at night. She has panic attacks, bawling hysterically the night before any exchange that she's going back to her father. Now, Your Honor, you're also going to hear Mom got the child into therapy pretty quickly with Tracy McConaughey's group at McConaughey Therapy. What's been happening since is there have been some disagreements on therapy. Mother's been scheduling the therapy on her parenting time. Father still shows up, even though the parents do not participate, and he sits in the waiting room and waits for his child to come, stares her down as she walks in to meet with her therapist, and then stares her out as she leaves. He does the same thing for her gymnastics meets, Your Honor. Stares the child down, films her, sometimes uses his physicality to block doorways. You're also going to hear he will come and sit behind the mother so close that she can literally feel his breath on the back of her neck. And then when she moves, so does he. For 5 months or so, Mom's been trying to work out things with Dad, and it's just not working. It's just not working. Miss Warren's here. She is the child's gymnastics coach. We have another witness available that they're going to say how much the child's demeanor has changed, especially over the past couple months. She is so anxious that when the father is present at her practices or meets, the coaches sometimes even change the direction of the child's performance so that she's not looking at her father. You'll hear testimony that the child arrives to the gym hungry because her father's refused her food, how she cries, bawling, how they've seen personally and observed how this father talks to this child, how they have witnessed the father screaming at the mother in front of the child. Your Honor, and it's not just this child that's being impacted, Your Honor. Father has 2 daughters. The younger child is a little girl named Amelia, and her mother, a woman named Jennifer Eckles, has also filed an action. This one's in Fulton County, claiming that Amelia, this little girl, is suffering severe stress, that it's affecting her her GI tract, that she's having stomach pain, that Miss Eckles is claiming that Amelia shows up in dirty clothes, dirty underwear, not bathed. My client will testify to the same. We have a verified pleading for that Fulton case, Your Honor, saying where that Miss Eckles is saying, look, he's also leaving these girls with inappropriate caretakers, including his brother who has a history of illegal drug use. So, Your Honor, we're here today, and thank you again for your time, because this mother is asking for your help for this 9-year-old child. First, Your Honor, the evidence is he's clearly in contempt. He's not taking actions that are in the best interest of this child or this child's welfare. He doesn't take her to activities. He's not offering mother right of first refusal. He's intimidating. He's not making sure the child is prepared for her activities, fed, bathed. He's not acting courteous, and is having a direct, very negative impact on this child. Your Honor, as you're aware, under 1993B, this court is expressly authorized to modify visitation rights. It can be my motion, or it can even be sua sponte, your motion, Your Honor, during a contempt proceeding. Anytime you find an action that may require the modification of visitation, you have that authority. You cannot modify custody, but you do have the authority under 1993B to modify visitation rights. And that's why we're here, Your Honor. The 2022 plan providing for a 50-50 plan for this child is not working. It's evidenced it's not working because of father's inability to comply with that order. It's evidenced by the fact this child is suffering such severe anxiety because of how her father is acting. And so mother asks that father be found in willful contempt. She asks that this 2022 order be modified so that father has every other weekend, Friday to Sunday, to minimize his impact. For this year, Christmas, they've agreed before everything went down that because of the way, I'm sure your honor have heard it, usually we split the holidays, right? First half, second half. But last year and this year, that split is falling right at Christmas Eve, Christmas Day. So the parties agreed that father would have parenting time from December 26th through return to school on January 3rd. Mother is concerned that that 8-day period is no longer in the best interest of this child, and there needs to be a break in the middle. One thing that is perhaps a nurse to my client's benefit is the fact that her brother, the child's uncle, the niece is having a wedding. The niece used to live with them for a few months. There's a wedding over New Year's Eve. So what mother is asking in the best interest of this child is that this court allow mother to travel to the wedding. It's in Memphis, Tennessee, and go to this wedding from Friday to Monday to give the child a break from the extreme stress she's facing while with her father, and then also so that this child can go to the wedding. For what it's worth, your honor, you're also going to hear that the uncle whose daughter is getting married has stage 4 cancer and has less than 6 months. So it's a very special, although slightly morbid and morose event, but mother would really like the opportunity for the child to attend that. Your honor, we also are asking for this order today to require Emerson to remain in therapy and that it be paid according to the 50-50 division. There's been some disagreements on how that's going to be paid because the therapist at McConaughey Therapy is out of network. Mother thinks it's imperative that Emerson stays in this therapy. She would like it ordered that unless the parents have to participate in therapy, that neither parent should be present for the child to enter or exit her therapist appointment. That needs to be a safe place for Emerson. Similarly, if it's not a gymnastics meet, she's asking that the order be required that you don't go to the practices, that, run-of-the-mill everyday practices, because that is causing anxiety for Emerson. Another thing she's asking for is that the parties be ordered to use Our Family Wizard. As you can probably suspect, the tone is not that ideal between these parents. So she's asking the court order the parties start using Our Family Wizard for communications. And going back to therapy, the therapist at McConaughey Therapy will only speak to the parties directly if both parents sign a release. We're asking this court to order that release be signed by both parents so that the therapist can communicate directly with both parents and also can make recommendations for the parents. So should something like a child discipline course, the advanced parenting seminar, any sort of individual therapy be recommended, that these parents be ordered to participate in that. Because at the end of the day, it's not about, well, I only want to do what I want to do on my time, which we believe is father's argument, but Emerson is suffering anxiety. Whether it's something that's typical or not, this child, it is without question, is suffering anxiety and something needs to be done. So thank you, Your Honor, for hearing us today and taking some action to help this children after you hear the evidence.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor, and good afternoon. And opposing counsel for Ms. Macaluso covered a lot of information, and I just want to make sure, given that the time this court has allotted, that we're focused on the things that were pled in the emergency amended petition for the contempt. So I'm just going to address those things that were pled in my opening statement, and that's the evidence that we intend to present, which will show that Mr. Eckles is absolutely not in contempt of the party's parenting plan. So in paragraph 3, count 3, contempt for interfering with the health of a child, Ms. Macaluso asserts that father has taken actions in violation of a court order by returning Emerson, who's the minor child, unkept without having taken a bath and in unclean clothes. Your Honor, the evidence will clearly show through Mr. Eckles' testimony that he's a great father. They have 50-50 custody, a 2-2-5 schedule where he has his daughter every Monday and Tuesday and every other weekend and half of the holidays and half of the summer. He takes great care of his daughter and he enjoy a wonderful, loving, healthy relationship. Just the other week, she wrote on a Post-it note how much she loves her made her a bracelet, telling her all the different ways that he loves her. He regularly attends her activities, gymnastics, regularly participates in her events at school, and they have a good bond, a wonderful father-daughter relationship, and have for many, many years. The second allegation contained in the contempt asserts that father regularly engages in actions, including speaking and discipline of the minor child, which cause her great distress and anxiety. Again, Your Honor, the evidence is going to show through Mr. Eckles' testimony that he disciplines his child appropriately, that he gives her boundaries, has a safe, healthy, bounded environment at his home. And he does not let her get away with behavior that is disrespectful. His discipline is appropriate. It's healthy. It involves timeouts and nothing that would cause her any type of severe distress and anxiety. It appears that what Miss Macaluso is relying upon are certain comments made by the child to her alone, which would be impermissible hearsay, and comments from a witness, Miss Carly Warren, who we would ask be sequestered, Your Honor, who is the gymnastics coach and is not a therapist, not somebody that has any type of professional therapeutic relationship with Emerson, not somebody that can diagnose the source of anxiety or stress. This is not a licensed professional therapist. It is a gymnastics coach. Finally, Your Honor, there is an allegation that on, as far as the nighttime regressions and the comments made about that, Your Honor, those episodes simply are not occurring at the father's house. So father has a different theory as to the source of this child's anxiety and stress. And you'll hear a little bit about that and about this child's overwhelming gymnastics schedule that includes 3-hour practices 3 times a week, plus additional tournaments, plus equestrian events, and all of the overwhelming stress and anxiety that comes from competing in very, very stressful tournaments. But the bedwetting is not occurring at father's house. She sleeps well at father's house. There is no co-sleeping or nighttime terrors or aggressions at father's house. You'll hear testimony directly from the father who has had his visitation with this minor child about how nights go at his house. What is concerning, Your Honor, and you'll see this in a police report, is that Miss Macaluso took the law into her own hands and willfully violated the order that she seeks to enforce. And what she did was, without any authority to do so, is withheld this minor child from October the 27th to October the 31st and did not allow my client to have his visitation. You'll see a certified police report where the police officer swore out that there was enough evidence to have Miss Macaluso arrested. My client did not pursue that because he's trying to find a civil resolution to this episode, but there is unclean hands going on in this situation. Your Honor, there's a mention of an October 25th gymnastics practice where the minor child was so overwhelmed at the thought of transitioning to parenting time with the father that she started crying uncontrollably. My client denies that the reason she was crying was because she had to see her dad. You will hear evidence and in the form of testimony, in the form of a Post-it note, in the form of a wonderful bracelet this child just made for her father, that their relationship is strong, healthy, nurturing, and loving, Your Honor. Now, they have asserted that as a result of father's willful behavior, this child is in severe emotional distress. My client is not opposed to engaging the services of a therapist. There is a parenting plan that the parties currently have that clearly states mom has final decision-making authority on medical. If she would like to have a counselor for the minor child, that's certainly something my client supports. And they're to split the cost 50-50. But if the mother, and it specifically says this, should mother choose to select non-emergency treatment that is out of network and father does not agree, then mother shall be solely responsible for said expense. There simply is no emergency here. Frankly, there isn't even anything that's extremely urgent. We believe that Ms. Macaluso is trying to circumvent the normal process for obtaining a modification of custody, Your Honor, rather than pleading for a modification of custody, filing for a modification of custody, showing that there's been a change in circumstances and presenting evidence to substantiate her case. She's filing a contempt, essentially asserting that this child is telling her some things, and one episode happened at gymnastics, and so there are urgent emergency issues that require an immediate change of custody. And unfortunately, Your Honor, that would completely ruin my client's relationship with her daughter, which as of right now is healthy. So we look forward to presenting our evidence, Your Honor. And there's also an issue with regards to that's for the first contempt. So if we're only hearing the third contempt, then the medical expenses are not an issue. So thank you, Your Honor. We look forward to presenting our case.
All right, thank you. Ms. Fagan, what's your position with regard to Ms. Warren? So I know whether when you're calling her, what to.
I'm going to call her right now because we're at school pickup time. So I'd like to call Carly Warren as our first witness.
Ms. Warren, raise your right hand. Oh, before we call Ms. Warren, let me just double check, just out of abundance of caution. Which gymnastics gymnastic organization is this?
Oh, Taylor, can you answer that question real quick?
Yes, it's all around gymnastics.
Okay, all right. Thank you. You may continue.
So we'd like to call Carly Warren.
All right. Ms. Warren, if you would raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give to the court is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, you may proceed.
Ms. Warren, how do you know Emerson Eckles?
I have been Emerson's gymnastics coach for the last 3 years.
Okay. And have you noticed any changes in her personality over the past several months?
Yes, ma'am. Over the last couple of months, I've noticed increasingly that she's been tearful, a little bit quieter, definitely having some additional anxiety. Wasn't really sure what the reasoning for it was, but definitely noticed that.
Okay. Was it concerning to you, this change in her behavior?
There was a couple of times where I did speak with Mom Taylor, because it just seemed very out of character. So a couple of times kind of being like, hey, I noticed she seemed really off today, or she cried over something that didn't make sense. And so just a couple of different conversations trying to understand why there was a change in behavior.
Now, you prepared an affidavit to support mother's petition for emergency contempt. Do you recall that?
Yes, ma'am.
And everything in that affidavit is true and correct to the best of your knowledge. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You stated in that affidavit that you kind of noticed a correlation between when Emerson was more upset and when she was not. Could you tell the court a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So noticing that she was having some anxiety or behavior issues or crying during practice, things like that, I had noticed that there were times when I would go to Taylor and I would mention to her that I noticed some behavior that was concerning and just checking in on her like I would with any gymnast that I have. And notice that there was often that when that would happen, Taylor might mention, oh, because she was with Dad last night. So she, just may be a little bit off. And I'm like, okay. So I just kind of noted that in my head. Then on several occurrences, Emerson would inform me herself, well, I was with Dad last night.
I have an objection with regards to Emerson, the minor child's testimony, or what she may have said. That's hearsay.
Okay. I'm because of the nature of the hearing, I'm going to allow it. You may proceed.
Thank you. So she would inform me at times when she had been with Dad. And so starting to put two and two together, that there were often occurrences where the days where she was having trouble, she had been with Dad the day before, the night before.
Noticed, let me stop that. Has father ever come to the gymnastics studio?
I'm sorry, give me 1 second, please. I apologize. Go ahead now. You may proceed.
Has father ever come to the gymnastics studio to watch practices or meets that you observed?
I apologize. I got to back up. I indicated that you could tell me what Emerson said, but then my alarm went off. So I do apologize. Can you tell me what she said? Because I missed that.
Yes, ma'am. She had, when I would notice that she was having, there were times when she was informing me that she had been with Dad the night before. And I would ask her, on occasion, hey, are you okay? Is everything okay? And I'm like, did you have a rough night last night? Or like, did you have a hard time sleeping? Are you tired? Normal questions that I ask any child who's having a difficult time. And so she would inform me, oh, I was with dad yesterday. And I would just leave it at that. I'm like, okay, well, if you need anything, let me know, and just kind of let it go.
So when you were noticing these events being how she would be more tearful or anxious, as you put in your affidavit, did you notice a correlation between those days and the times that she was with her father?
Yes.
And has the father ever come into the gym?
Yes.
Okay. Have you ever noticed Emerson's demeanor changing when her father is present at the gym?
Yes. In my affidavit, I spoke of a particular practice that I remember specifically, that we were up in the front gym that has beams where there's a window that goes out into the lobby. And dad was standing at the window, and Emerson was trying to communicate with her. I have no idea what conversation was. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop on that. Just I noticed that she was very distracted and seemingly kind of bothered by the situation. And she was not practicing well. She was falling on some of her skills. And so I just asked her to come over, and I said, hey, is it bothering you that dad is here? And she said yes. And so I was like, okay, I want you to face the opposite direction on this beam, and I don't want you to look at dad. And so
Has it ever happened? Okay. Has it ever happened that you had to do something similar with a floor routine?
Yes. There was a meet this season that we were at, and dad was sitting in a particular place on the floor or next to the floor, not on the floor, that would have been in her direct vision while she was doing a floor routine. And Emerson kept looking over at dad, knowing where he was. And so I made the decision to turn the entire routine to make sure that she would not see dad at any point while she was competing.
So based on your personal observations, having dad present at the gym is a problem for Emerson?
Yes, I feel like it's a distraction.
And based on you having coached her over 3 years, you're noticing a consistent change in Emerson, especially on days she stays with her father. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now let's come to the breakdown that led to you contacting my client and doing this affidavit. Could you tell the court what happened on October 25th?
Yes, ma'am. We were in the middle of practice, and we were heading over to vault. My assistant coach was taking them to vault. I had stepped away to get a sip of water or whatever was going on. And so they were setting up the events, and there was a circumstance that occurred while they were moving mats. And the coach directly told me what happened, and then I confirmed it with Emerson after that, that both of their stories aligned with that. But they were moving mats, and she was 9 months pregnant at this point, very large and pregnant. And Emerson kind of made a joke, are you going to squish your baby? Because she was moving a mat and it was kind of rubbing up against her stomach. And Coach Bree said to her something along the lines of, girl, zip it. Like, be quiet. Like, I'm fine. And Emerson immediately snapped back with no, which was very out of character for her to ever talk back. She's relatively quiet as it is. And so for her to not only, speak up loudly, but to be that direct and disrespectful to a coach was out of character for her. And so Coach Bree had her sit out. And so when I walked over and I saw what happened, Bree informed me, and I said, okay, I said, let me go see what's going on. And so I went over to talk to Emerson, and I was asking her what happened. She told me the same thing. And I looked at her and I was like, that we cannot act like that. Like, that is disrespectful and defiant. And you cannot talk to a coach like that. And she immediately started crying. And I was like, why would you say that to her? And she started crying, and she said, Dad will yell at me and tell me to shut up, and I'm not allowed to say anything back. And so immediately when she started crying like that, she was still near the team. And I didn't feel like that was in her best interest. So I pulled her over to the side so that we could talk. And I got her to calm down, and I was like, okay. And I was like, thank you for telling me. And I was like, I understand, where this came from. I understand that you're struggling right now. And I asked her a couple of additional questions. One, as a mandated reporter, to make sure that I did not feel like she was in physical harm. And she did not indicate anything in regards to physical harm. And I asked her for permission to talk to mom about it. I encouraged her to talk to mom. I also encouraged her to let dad know that it bothers her when he acts like that, or when he says things like that to her. And she told me that she often lets dad yell at her even when it's not her fault, because she doesn't want her little sister Amelia to get screamed at. And so that she'll take punishment when it's not her fault. And again, I asked permission if I could, if she was okay with me talking to mom, and she's like, yes, I'd tell mom everything. And I said, okay. And then I asked her if she wanted a hug, and she said yes. And I gave her a hug, and she started crying, and she said, I just don't want to go back to dad's house anymore.
So you said that there wasn't any physical harm, but as a gymnastics coach, are you at all concerned about how Amelia's mental health is doing right now?
Yes.
I know you can't diagnose her, but just from your observations as a coach.
All I can say is that I see the anxiety in her, and seeing a kid crying in practice is not typically how we would see it, because most of the kids, they'll have moments and they'll have anxiety, and I see that in many children, but to see it consistently like that was alarming for me.
Okay. And you mentioned when you were talking with her, did you have any reason to believe or not believe her?
Not at all.
Did you think she was making it up? Or, sometimes kids say things just because they're mad somebody didn't give them cotton candy at the circus. So tell us how believable you feel Emerson is.
I have never had Emerson even exaggerate something when we've had issues between gymnasts or things like that. She has always been a kid who, whatever comes out of her mouth, I believe it. She's never given me any indicator to not trust wholeheartedly what she says.
Okay. Nothing further, subject to redirect.
All right, Cross.
Good afternoon, Ms. Warren. My name is Damon Bivick, and I represent Mr. Eckles. And I'm just going to be asking you a few questions for cross-examination, okay?
Absolutely.
All right. So the past few months have been Emerson's competition season. Is that correct?
Correct.
So there's lots of tournaments and competitions going on.
They attend 6 from August until this past weekend in November.
Okay, and how long are each of these tournaments? Are they one day, multiple days?
One day, except state meet is 2 days.
Okay, and how many days a week does Emerson practice for kind of your gym mandated practice?
Mm-hmm. She attends 3 hours for each practice, and that's 3 days a week, so 9 hours total.
Has she missed any of her practices in the last few months leading up to her competition?
I would have to go back to our attendance record to see what she's missed or if she's missed. Nothing excessive from what I can recall.
Okay, so she's been, for the most part, as far as you can recall, going to all of her practices for the full 3 hours and working hard at her craft.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and on top of the 3 hour a week gym mandated practices, she does additional private training with you. Is that correct, or with your gym?
Correct.
Okay, and how frequent are those additional classes?
She typically does maybe a 1 hour once a week with me.
Okay, so she's over there about 4 times a week on average for these past several months. Is that accurate?
3 times a week. The 1 hour private lesson is prior to one of her 3 hour practices.
Okay, and then on top of that, there is a 1-day competition, and there's been 6 of those, except for the state meet, which was a 2-day competition. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And she participated and completed all of those competitions?
I believe that's correct.
And I'm assuming she participates in multiple events at these competitions. Is that accurate?
Yes, each gymnast competes in all 4 events.
And did she, how would you describe her talent level? Does she win medals? Is she one of your better students?
It's hard to rank better or anything like that, but she is a talented gymnast and she works very hard. And from what I know, she received medals at the meets.
Okay, and when was the most recent competition?
2 weekends ago, the weekend before Thanksgiving.
And did she win a medal at that one?
I believe so.
Okay, and this was after the October 25th incident where she had some stress and anxiety.
Correct.
Okay. Have you noticed anything about her performance or her talent dropping since October the 25th, as far as her ability to perform at these competitions and at practice?
I would have to go back and look. I have spreadsheets based on their performances to know for sure. The only thing I did notice was that she had been performing very strong on beam, and the last 2 meets, I believe her beam scores had dropped significantly, and I saw an increase in her anxiety, which beam is one of the hardest events to cover that up because you're standing on 4 inches. And so if you're anxious, you shake. I had planned on at state meet her being my anchor, which at state meet for team finals, the top 6 gymnasts get to compete on an event. And so Emerson was supposed to go in on beam for team finals. She did compete on beam. Leading up to state, I had kind of planned on her being my anchor because she's been one of my top scorers on beam. But then the last 2 meets, including state, she was not a top scorer, noting that she wasn't always hitting vertical on handstands and things like that. And so at the last minute, I decided to move her a slot down so that I didn't want that anxiety to overcome her and put too much pressure being the anchor.
Okay, so your best gymnasts compete at the state level, is that right? Your top 6?
At team final. So state, everyone, all of my gymnasts qualified for state. And so everybody competed the first day as individuals for themselves. And then the top 8 teams in the state of Georgia come back to compete for team finals on Sunday. And then I can only take my top 6 to each event.
Okay, so you included her in your top 6 for the beam, and instead of being the anchor, she was the position right before the anchor.
I believe that's correct.
Okay, and have you spoken to Mr. Eckles about any of your concerns or any of the things that Emerson and her mother, Miss Macaluso, have told you?
So I have not. He was not, until recently, he had not been coming to the gym and attending things. And he sent me a message prior to a meet, specifically addressing my affidavit, and was quite confrontational in asking me if I'm not okay with where he sits at meets, where would I like for him to sit? And I did not respond to that because I'm not getting into a confrontational situation with a parent.
Okay, so I have that text message. It looks like it was sent November 4th, 2023 at 3:19 p.m. Does that sound right?
That could be correct.
And it says, "Hi, Carly, I received your affidavit. I saw that you had a concern with where I was sitting at a past meet. Where would you prefer I sit today to watch Emerson so that this isn't an issue again? Question mark."
Correct.
So you believe that that text message was confrontational and did not warrant any type of a response from you?
Correct.
Okay, so you did not respond to him at all from that message, correct?
Correct.
And
that was based on the advice from the owners of our gym. I called them when I received it and asked them how they felt like I should proceed, and they agreed that I should not respond.
Okay, and you have not had any conversations with Mr. Eckles about Emerson experiencing stress when he was at practice that day? You haven't talked to him about October 25th at all, correct?
Correct. I've never had a situation. He was never typically there to discuss situations with. He really didn't attend until the last 2 weeks. And then all of a sudden he started showing up to practices. He was rarely there. And so typically if I had any issues or needed to discuss anything about Emerson, it was with Taylor.
Okay, and Taylor works at the gym with you, correct? She's a coach there at the recreational level?
Yeah, she coaches rec classes.
Okay. So the two of you are work colleagues?
We work at the same place, but team coaches and rec coaches don't really work directly together.
Okay. Now you have Mr. Eckles' contact information as a parent, his email address, his phone number, correct?
I do not. Coaches do not receive unless parents have given us directly like their contact information. The only way I have to contact him, myself personally, is via the GroupMe app because we're all on that app.
Then you didn't think to ask Miss Macaluso or Mr. Eckles' email address to address things that Taylor had said directly with him or to express any concerns directly with him?
No.
Okay. And you are not a licensed therapist, correct?
That is correct.
You don't have any degrees in the counseling field, correct?
That is correct.
You have not had any sessions with Emerson where you have sat down and talked to her about the source of her anxiety in any kind of a professional setting, correct?
Not in a professional setting, no.
You are not qualified to diagnose the source of Emerson's anxiety, correct?
No, sir. And I'm not trying to diagnose anything. I'm just stating facts of what she said to me while I was at practice.
Okay, but you've never actually observed any parenting time between Emerson and her dad, correct?
That is correct.
Are you aware that they share 50-50 custody, meaning that Emerson is with her dad 50% of the time?
I am not aware of any of their legal custody agreement. All I know is that she does spend time with dad and she spends time with mom. That's all I was aware of.
Okay, but you can't talk about their personal relationship with each other because you've never seen the two of them interact outside of your gym, correct?
Correct. All I can attest to is what has been stated to me from Emerson herself.
Okay. All right, that's all the questions I have, Judge.
Okay. Any follow-up, Ms. Fagan?
Yes, just real quickly. To make sure I understand, Ms. Warren, you can't testify about what happens not in the public setting of the gym, but you can testify about what you personally observed in the public setting of the gym, correct?
That is correct.
And is it a fair summarization of your testimony that you have noticed father causing this child anxiety at the gym just by sitting on the other side of a window, correct?
That is correct.
All right. Do you have any indication that gymnastics is what's causing Emerson her anxiety?
I would not think that that is the case. We have quite a few gymnasts who are younger than Emerson, and prior to these circumstances, Emerson was performing well without anxiety, competed all year last year without the anxiety. So I would not correlate the gymnastics being the reason for the anxiety.
Okay. You said that father, y'all talked about the text message that he sent you, but in the past 2 weeks, could you please tell the court what father's demeanor has been like or what you personally observed since he started coming to the gym during Emerson's practices?
Yes. He typically, my understanding is that he would have, I guess, just dropped her off prior to the last few weeks because I never really saw him often. I might see him standing in the lobby when it was pickup time or things like that, but never really coming and staying for any period of time during practice. Occasionally, obviously, when we were up in the front that one time, he was there. So there were probably a few occurrences over the last couple of years. But then over the last couple of weeks, it's like he's staying at every practice that he's dropping her off, and he stands there at the window and he's talking to parents he's never talked to. And even when Emerson and I were in a private lesson, he came back to the back gym and was like peering through the windows, and to the point where I almost went to the front gym because it made me uncomfortable. I was not going to address anything with Emerson or let that be something that she was even aware of. And then after the private lesson, he's still there at the gym, standing at the window, watching practice. At one point, he pulls out his camera and starts videotaping, which he had never done before. We were just in the middle of conditioning. There was nothing to be videotaping, which made me, again, feel uncomfortable as if we're being watched. But again, I just continued to coach like I normally do. But it was just very out of character for him to be there as much as he has been recently.
And you said it was uncomfortable for you, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And as a coach, do you feel it's uncomfortable for one of your students?
when I've noticed for Emerson, I do believe that there are times when it has put her or caused her to feel uncomfortable based on my observation.
Okay, thank you. Nothing further.
All right. Any other witnesses?
Just, Your Honor, can I ask 2 questions directly related to the last question she just asked about the video? That was not something originally asked about.
Okay.
Do you prohibit the use of videos by parents at practices or meets at your gym?
No, not at all.
Okay, and did
But
you?
it is rare to have a parent video. It's one thing if your child's doing something on a beam or a bar or a new skill to be videotaping your child while they do that. But to be in the middle of conditioning and having a coach or having a parent videotaping conditioning is very rare.
Okay, did you express to Mr. Eckles that you had concerns about the video or it was making you uncomfortable or Emerson uncomfortable? Did you just let him know that, hey, I think Emerson doesn't like this?
No, if it had proceeded, I was going to, but he didn't continue with the videotaping, so I let it go because I didn't want to create a confrontation and make Emerson feel more uncomfortable with having a confrontation between a coach and her dad.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Ms. Faden, call your next witness.
Sure.
Am I free to go at this point? I need to pick up my children.
Yes, you are. Thank you so much, Ms. Warren.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you.
For just a few questions, I'd like to call Nicole Sesniak, please.
Okay, and who's Ms. Sesniak?
She is a friend who's observed the interaction between father and child and father and mother.
I'm at this juncture. I'm gonna give you 2 witnesses. You can, if you think she's important, that's fine, but you only get 2.
All right, well then I'll call mother, Your Honor. I'll call Taylor Macaluso.
All right, thank you. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony about to give to the court is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
Yes.
All right, you may proceed.
Ms. Macaluso, you have filed a petition believing it was an emergency matter what's happening to your child, correct?
That's correct.
Could you please tell, looking just at this contempt 3 about interfering with Emerson's health, could you please tell the court why you believe father's actions are harming your child?
Yes. Emerson has always historically been kind of a happy, easygoing kid. We've seen a significant shift over the past several months. She is not her happy, easygoing self. She is exhibiting a lot of anxiety. I have, tried to speak with her about it. She has started on the nights prior to transition back to her dad. She has been wetting the bed on occasion. We are seeing full-blown meltdowns in my home on the nights before transitions where she is crying hysterically. She will not leave my side. She will not sleep by herself. She has expressed numerous concerns to me about her father's home, about the fact that she is told to stay in her room most of the time. The fact that the only reason she is willing to go to her father's home right now is because she wants to protect her little sister. She has stated that she does not want to return to her father's home. She is scared. Her father yells a lot. Her father tells her to shut up. She's told me that her father has denied her food. And it's just been deteriorating ever since.
In your experience with him, has he ever yelled at you or screamed at you?
Yes, absolutely.
Could you describe, have you ever seen him yell at Emerson?
I have seen him raise his voice at Emerson significantly. He's also done the same with me, whether it was a private or a public setting.
And when he yells at you, could you tell the court just kind of what's his MO when he yells? What is that like?
It's very physically intimidating. He gets very close, within inches. There's only a look to describe. It's a very intense look in his eyes, to the point where I am fearful that he may hit me. It has never progressed to that point, but he is very intimidating during these episodes.
Okay. Now let's talk about what got you here to file this emergency action. talk to me about how Emerson, how it was relayed to you by the coach. Just what got you to file the emergency?
It was the
How this was different than every other day.
Yeah, so it was the conclusion of practice on that date, I think October 25th. I was actually about to leave the gym. I transport another person's child, and we were about to walk off, and Carly came and ran after me and said she had something urgent to speak with me about. I sent Emerson and her friend into the gym, and Carly and I went to a private office where she relayed to me exactly what had happened. It matched exactly what she testified to today. During that conversation, Carly was so concerned, she was actually crying while she was trying to relay this information about how scared she was for Emerson's well-being.
Okay. And what was your first thing you did after that?
The first thing I did is that I sought to get Emerson into therapy immediately.
Okay. And when you met with the therapist, which therapist did you choose for Emerson?
We used McConaughey Counseling, Catherine Grabowski specifically.
Okay. Now you heard in the opening statement of opposing counsel that you prevented father from having any action with the child in late October. Could you tell the court about just why you made certain decisions at that time?
Absolutely. Upon hearing what had happened at the gym, what was relayed to Carly Warren, I immediately took Emerson to McConaughey Counseling. During that, explaining to them the reason why we're there. During that consultation, Emerson spoke about her concerns or what was happening at her father's house to the counselor. That counselor was gravely concerned. She was so concerned that she actually said that she needed to get back to me.
I'm going to object unless the counselor is present and I'm able to ask the counselor what she said. That's hearsay.
I agree. The counselor is one. That's another layer of hearsay. So I'm not going to allow that part.
Can you just explain, Taylor, what your course of conduct was?
In what sense?
After you took Emerson to the counselor, what did you then proceed with your course of conduct?
I followed.
What did you do next?
I had Emerson remain in my custody at the recommendation of the counselor.
Okay. And then did you communicate with Dad?
I did. I was in full communication with him throughout all of the days.
And did you explain to Dad that there were serious concerns about the child going back to Dad immediately?
Yes.
Okay. And did you ask Dad to take any action?
I asked Dad to schedule a session with a therapist, and so that we could take some time to hopefully figure this out. And immediately, at least at that juncture, Dad was not willing to do so.
So to make sure I'm following this right, you get the statement from the coach, you go to the therapist, and then you ask Dad to talk to the child. You'd go to the therapist, and then you ask Dad to talk to the therapist about what the child was going through. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And was father willing to call the therapist and get to the bottom of what his child was going through?
At that time, no.
Okay. Tell me about what happened next. Did father call the police on you?
Yes, he did.
Okay. And could you, don't go into hearsay what the police told you, but just tell the court what happened next when the police were called.
Which instance? Both of them?
Well, on the first instance, when the police were called, did you ever communicate back with the police what was going on?
Yes, I absolutely did. I contacted Roswell Police, and I spoke with the officer directly to let them know that was going on. And they seemed to just think it was a civil situation.
Okay. Did the officers say anything about how father was presenting? Was father wanting to charge you with any criminal cases?
Yes. So with the second time that father contacted the police, I was told that Dad was insistent upon having me arrested.
I'm going to object to what an officer said unless there's a certified, I have a certified copy of the police report. I'm fine to tender that if she wants to reference that. But if this is some phone call that I wasn't a party to, and this officer isn't here, that's hearsay and not admissible.
So you're okay with her mentioning what's in the report, but nothing outside of that?
Yes,
ma'am. I'll write those parameters.
And so in the police report, is it clear that father was asking for you to be investigated criminally?
Yes, in the police report, it clearly states that father wanted criminal charges pressed against me.
Did father ever go to talk to the counselor?
Yes.
Okay. And to your knowledge, has father spoken with the therapist?
Yes.
Okay. And is Emerson continuing to see that therapist?
Yes.
Okay. How much engagement do you and father have with this therapist?
In terms of Emerson's appointments, absolutely no direct involvement.
Okay, but does father participate in these appointments, even though you and he have no involvement in them?
Yes.
Could you tell the court about what father does for these therapist appointments?
Yes, when we show up to the therapy appointment, we have to wait in a waiting room. The therapist will simply come out and retrieve Emerson. Mr. Eckles is insistent on being there for those appointments and sitting in the lobby with Emerson and I. He will actually sit in the lobby for the duration of the appointment. I feel uncomfortable being there, so I physically leave the appointment for the duration. I will sit in my car, I will drive down the street, and I will return immediately before Emerson is to be released. And Mr. Eckles is still there.
Do you feel intimidated by his actions?
Yes.
And you heard that the coach talked about the fact that he comes to gymnastics practices. Is that your understanding as well?
Yes.
Do you feel intimidated by his presence there?
Yes, I do.
Do you think it impacts Emerson that he is present at this appointment and the practices that are occurring on your time?
I do.
Okay. In your pleading, you said that Emerson regularly comes back from parenting time significantly unkempt. Could you tell the court about that?
Yes, it's sometimes she's told me she hasn't had floss or her teeth brushed. Her hair is a tangled hot mess and it takes quite a significant time to untangle it. She will tell me she hasn't showered for several days. Some of her clothes are ill-fitting or stained. She also will mention certain denials of food.
In your pleading, you also noted in paragraph 4 that father regularly misses the child's activities. Who has final decision making on the child's activities?
I do.
Okay. And has father refused to respect this final decision making authority?
Yes.
Do you feel it's having a negative impact on Emerson?
I do, because she's missing one of her activities that she absolutely just adores.
Okay. Now, what's father's excuse to you about why he's missing these activities?
Your Honor, as far as the relevance, I thought we were just limiting this contempt hearing to the emergency about the health of the child.
I agree. Just be mindful.
Your Honor, this is directly relevant to actually an issue that father brought up. Father seems to be taking the position that the child being in so many activities is the problem for this child, and it's not his fault that she's anxious, it's the activities. And so I'm asking my client to testify briefly about the fact that father's actually withholding the child's release activity.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll give you some leeway then.
Thank you, Your Honor. So Taylor, talk a little bit about Emerson. Like, let's touch just on that. Father's position is that the anxiety Emerson's suffering is because she's overly scheduled. Do you think that's accurate?
No, I don't. First off, with her gymnastics, she is in it to win it. She has goals to be a collegiate gymnast. She looks forward to her practices each and every day. She tells me when other kids are tired, she's like, I want to do it again tomorrow. She just thinks it's absolutely amazing. She does not, have any concerns about the frequency. I also consistently check in with her. I've even kind of, Dad did bring up concerns, I think, about, the frequency, and I've even asked Emerson's therapist to explore that. And to date, we haven't received feedback that that's the cause of anything. The other thing is horseback riding. Her second activity is simply once a week for an hour. It is a fun recreational activity for her. And she just loves to do it. She loves to ride horses, loves to either get outside and jump or learn a new skill in dressage. It's just a really, really fun activity for her. That's no pressure.
So she's not competing at like the elite level in horseback riding like she is with gymnastics.
Oh, absolutely not. It is just a recreational, once a week, very fun activity for her, just like if someone went out to go to a playground.
And so who pays for this horseback riding?
I do.
Okay. And you said it's once a week. So does that mean it falls on Father's Saturday mornings?
Yes, it's on shared parenting time on Saturdays.
And do you think Father's refusal to take her to this hobby, horseback riding for her, is harming Emerson?
I do. And it's my understanding that she's expressed this concern with her father directly, and her father has ignored her concerns.
Okay. You talked about the nighttime regressions, but you didn't talk anything about her inability to sleep, to stay in her bed anymore. Could you tell the court very briefly about that?
Yes, Emerson will not sleep in her room anymore at this juncture. I've had to set up an air mattress for her. It gets even worse on the nights of transitions, where she physically requires to sleep in bed with me. She will not sleep otherwise.
And you're aware that Amelia's mother, Jennifer, has filed litigation against Father as well?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And are you seeing the same sort of stress issues that Amelia's mother is seeing in her child and yours?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think Father...
Let me stop. Let me ask you this with regard to your position is that you think your child is having these stress issues for being with Father. What have y'all had conversations about what it is that she specifically has some concerns about, or have you talked with her about what it is that she is talking about, wherein you think whatever stressor she's having is related to him and not from maybe the whole situation? I mean, how do you know it's from him?
I've attempted to address these concerns with Dad in the past. I've even let him know that I've had extreme concerns with transitions and things like that. I've asked Dad for therapy, for help, and coming together to work with our daughter. And Dad has refused. Not only has he refused, but he actually turned around and directly said some outlandish accusations about why I was the cause of all of her anxiety. Was not on board with therapy or anything like that. And that type of behavior is exactly a great example of that.
So Taylor, I think it might help the court. Could you give an examples when you tried to raise with Mr. Eckles that you're worried about Emerson's anxiety and the way he disciplines, how he responded to you specifically?
Yes, I directly, well, actually almost any instance, even instances that have occurred at the gym, I've attempted to directly address that with Mr. Eckles, and they are immediately dismissed. They are either dismissed, and more than likely 90% of the time it is met with accusatory nature, him accusing me of harassment, of alienation, of several other things, and just an attempt to deflect from the situation. But each and every instance, he has dismissed what is being stated to him.
I guess what I'm trying to get is, has he accused you specifically of your faith being the issue for why you're concerned?
Yes, one of the reasons that he said that Emerson was having anxieties is because I do not have a direct belief in Jesus. He told me that one of the reasons for her anxiety is the fact that he claims that I told her her clothing was cheap in 2019.
I'm sorry, what now?
Yes.
That you
No,
told
repeat it.
Yeah, that he claims that our daughter told him in 2019 that I told her that the clothing from his home was cheap.
Okay.
And that was just over the summer, that was one of the root causes of her anxiety.
So 4 years later, Dad's saying you may or may not have made a comment 4 years ago, and that's why she's having anxiety, not the fact that she's being yelled at by her father.
Correct.
Do you have a concern about the caretakers that Father is leaving this child with?
I absolutely do. I think one of them was mentioned with Emerson's uncle, Chandler Eckles. He unfortunately has a past history of known drug abuse, several relapses. During a recent
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm just going to object. This is not in the emergency pleading, anything about a caretaker. I mean, it's not mentioned anywhere in their pleading about the reason for an emergency.
Ms. Fagan?
Well, we're a notice pleading state, Your Honor, and a lot of this is coming at me as it moves on. And we have raised the issue about the child's wellness and welfare. And so if dad is leaving the child with a drug user, I think that goes directly to the underlying concern about what might be causing this child stress to the point that she's wetting her bed at 9 years old.
Okay. I'm not gonna entertain that issue at this juncture.
Okay.
All right. You may continue. You may
Are
continue.
you concerned about father's willingness to be supportive of therapy for Emerson?
On a long-term basis, absolutely.
What do you mean by that?
I think dad has a history of agreeing to services or certain things when there's a close eye on him, and dad will attempt to block those or deny those when he doesn't think anyone is watching.
Okay. Are you asking the court to consider making a change to the parenting plan pursuant to Georgia statutes?
Yes.
What do you think is in Emerson's best interest?
I think, I think Emerson should be able to enjoy time with both of her parents in a loving and healthy manner. I think in order to accomplish that I think Emerson would be best served to have reduced parenting time with her dad. I think he can be a much better father with a smaller set of time directly with her.
Do you think the impact that's happening with the anxiety on Emerson, do you think that might be directly related to father having too much time?
Yes, I think so. I think it's I think shared custody right now is stressful for dad. We're seeing that in his denial of activities. I even have messages from dad that he's stretched too thin. And I think that might be a direct correlation.
What schedule do you think would be best for Emerson right now? Which schedule would cause her less stress, in your opinion?
I think that Emerson should spend time with her dad on an every other weekend basis.
Okay. What about the alternating holiday schedule? Do you have a problem with that remaining the same?
No, I do not.
Okay. Tell the court about what you're asking for with regard to Christmas this year. And why you think that modification to be in the best interest of Emerson.
Emerson, as we stated, Emerson has been experiencing a lot of stress. It's twofold. I think it would be nice for Emerson to have parenting time kind of broken up a little bit more. So that gives her a little bit less of a standard chunk of time directly related with her father. The other thing, as was mentioned before, is that there is, which happens to coincide, there is a family wedding with a terminally ill family member. And this was a family, first off, the person getting married lived with us for several months over the summer. Emerson has a nickname for her. She calls her, we had a nanny at the time, but she calls her Big Broke, which is just a running joke with everybody. She really enjoys her time with this family member, not to mention that her uncle does have terminal stage 4 liver cancer.
Back to therapy, would you ask this court to order that not only Emerson continue in therapy, but the parties sign any releases requested by the therapist to communicate with the other parent openly?
Yes.
Would you ask that if the therapist has any recommendations, a parenting seminar, a discipline seminar, that the court consider asking that therapeutically the parties follow whatever the therapist recommendation is for this child?
And absolutely. And whether that recommendation is individual counseling for myself, for Mr. Eckles, for us to do co-parenting counseling, whatever that therapy recommendation is, it only helps Emerson.
Okay. Thank you. Nothing further, subject to redirect.
Cross.
All right, I'll move to tender the October 30th, 2023 police report. Your Honor, I emailed that to your staff attorney. I can share my screen if that's...
Right. Ms. Marshall, give him share screen capabilities, please.
Okay, can you see my screen, Ms. Macaluso?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'm going to show you what we will mark as D1, which is a certified copy of a police report made by the Roswell Police Department. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay, now I'm going to take you down to the comments from the officer in the narrative. Okay, so here
Wait,
the officer.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but which narrative, or there's a number of narratives.
So this
Which
one is
narrative are
from
you going to
Officer
first?
J.L. Bennett on Wednesday, November 1, 2023. Looks like around 3:12.
So the second narrative.
Yes. I think it's the supplemental. Case supplemental report.
Please enter your new
Okay,
password.
so Detective Bennett made contact with Mr. Eckles, it says here. And if you see this paragraph that starts with "I explained," so here the
Yes.
detective is saying, "I explained to Mr. Eckles that based on the information provided to this point, there is the potential to request a criminal warrant for Miss Macaluso's for
Good afternoon,
misdemeanor
Judge Barrett's
child
office, Selena.
custody for not allowing
It's Mark.
dad
Sorry,
his scheduled parenting time." And then you see where it says Mr. Eckles advised that he would like to take some time to consider if he wishes to pursue this criminal case. That's the opposite of what you had described about him wanting to pursue criminal charges against you. Have you read this police
That is
report?
the opposite of what was in his original police report made to Officer Smith.
Okay, so you're saying that Officer Bennett is not being truthful? Is that your testimony?
I am not saying that. This also doesn't include what what Detective Bennett and I also discussed. This is just a very one-sided point of view.
Okay, so you think that this narrative from Mr. Bennett is a one-sided point of view?
I think that this just shows a conversation that he had with Detective Bennett. At the police report prior with Officer Smith, it was very clearly stated in that police report that he wanted to press criminal charges.
Okay, you did in fact withhold Emerson from seeing her father from October the 27th through October the 31st, correct?
At the advice of Emerson's therapist, that's correct.
And you were aware that this is father's parenting time, correct? When you did it, you knew this was his time.
Again, that's correct.
Okay, and I'm going to direct you to your motion for contempt in your parenting plan. In paragraph 3, you're essentially saying in your emergency petition that Mr. Eckles violated section 3I of your parenting plan. Do you have a copy of your parenting plan handy, ma'am?
I don't right now.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen so that you can see your parenting plan and your contempt filing, okay?
Okay.
Okay, this is your contempt filing. I'm sure you recognize it, the one that your lawyer filed.
Mhm.
And then you can see here in paragraph 3 at the top of this page, you reference section 3I, right?
Mhm.
Okay, I'm going to take you down to section 3I, which is what you're talking about in your parenting plan. Okay, so this is section 3I, right? Roman numeral 3, miscellaneous parenting provisions. And then I'm scrolling down to subsection I. Okay, so this is what you're saying Mr. Eckles violated, right? No parenting time shall interfere with the health, physical or emotional, education or welfare of the child, semicolon. However, no parenting time shall be unreasonably withheld from the other parent. You're aware that you're not supposed to withhold a child from parenting time with the other parent, correct? Because you referenced this section.
Yes, unreasonably.
Okay, so you thought your conduct was reasonable in not allowing Emerson to see her dad or speak to her dad via FaceTime for 4 days.
Mr. Eckles never attempted to contact Emerson via FaceTime. He never attempted to ask about her well-being. He never asked a single thing about his daughter directly. The only thing that Mr. Eckles did was email me multiple times threatening legal action against me.
Well, in his emails threatening legal action, he was demanding that you give him his daughter pursuant to his parenting time, right?
Yes, this also, the provision that you're referencing is also stating that no parenting time shall interfere with the health of the child. And I would think that a therapist's recommendation stating that, hey, we need to take a step back for a few days. Let's get dad in here. I offered dad makeup time. I was in constant communication with him. He has refused that makeup time. He's never accepted it.
Okay, you have a therapist recommendation that you brought with you to court saying that it was not healthy for Emerson to spend.
Objection, Your Honor. I'm going to stop this line of questioning because it's because father refused to sign a release that we don't have the therapist here. So I think any insinuation about mother not having a therapist recommendation live and in person is not a fair line of questioning or argument, Your Honor.
Mr. Bivick, what's your position on that?
Well, my position is if she's alluding to some piece of evidence that exists that she's relying upon to justifiably deny my parents' parenting time, I'm just asking that she produce it. We're not aware of any
But by
such
the same
evidence.
token, if her position is that he wouldn't allow her to produce it, then I don't know if you can necessarily ask her to produce something if his consent is what's withholding it.
Well, Mr. Eckles is fine with allowing the testimony. He signed a release.
Oh, okay. I thought Ms. Fagan said that he did not sign a release.
No, Mr. Eckles is
So
fine. I mean, he's here and he can testify about it, but he signed the release.
Okay.
Signed a release for our daughter to attend therapy.
right.
No, not
He has
to,
not signed the release to communicate with me, and McConaughey therapy has a very stringent no speak to attorneys unless everyone is very much on board with it, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I can just say we have not received any correspondence from Ms. Fagan's office indicating that they wanted this witness to testify, and we didn't object to this witness testifying. So we feel a little out of the loop. I mean, we don't have any objections to Ms.
let's start with asking Ms. Macaluso, how did you make contact? How did you ask Mr. Eckles to sign the consent? You're saying you asked him to sign it so that you can have a therapist here, and he said no? Tell me what occurred with regard to getting the therapist here, or getting the therapist notes, or getting the therapist summary.
Ms. Fagan has attempted to contact McConaughey Counseling or Catherine Grabowski directly. I received a note that Catherine was not willing to speak directly to legal counsel.
I'm sorry. So you said that you heard, one more time, please. I apologize.
Mm-hmm. So Ms. Fagan, my attorney, did try to reach out to McConaughey Counseling directly. Catherine Grabowski did not respond to her. She sent me an email that was very explicit that she was unwilling to speak to any legal counsel. All parties needed to be on board. That she would potentially, without all parties being on board, speak to their
How
guardian.
did you feel that Mr. Eckles was not on board? How do you know he wasn't on board?
That I don't know directly.
Well, did you present it to him and ask him if he would sign it?
I did not.
So how do you know he's not on board if you never presented it to him? All right, I think those are relevant questions. Mr. Bivitt, you may proceed.
Okay, so you did not, is it true that you did not allow, is it true that there was no FaceTime contact between Emerson and her father from October 27th through October the 31st? They didn't talk on the phone.
Because dad never attempted to FaceTime. It is in our court order that the parent is entitled to a FaceTime phone call once a day with the child or at reasonable intervals. Mr. Eckles never attempted to FaceTime, call, or text Emerson. Emerson had her iPad with her. He never attempted to call her on her iCloud account, attempted to text her, nothing. He had several avenues of communication to get to Emerson and chose not to.
Okay, respectfully, ma'am, he called the police, sent you several demanding emails asking that you turn over your daughter to him immediately. And you're saying that the reason why they didn't talk was because he didn't want to talk? He didn't want to initiate?
But you're the one who was referencing face calls that they're being denied, and there were no FaceTime phone calls to deny or nor attempts at communication to deny. That was Mr. Eckles' own choice.
Well, what efforts did you make to encourage Emerson to call her father?
Historically, it is always the other parent.
No, not historically. From October the 27th, when you withheld Emerson from her father, what efforts did you make between October 27th and October 31st to encourage Emerson to call her dad?
Emerson typically expects a nightly phone call with her dad. I have asked her during that parenting time, I did ask her directly if she wanted to speak to her dad, and she said she did not.
I'm going to show you what I will mark as Defense Exhibit 2, and I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, this is dated November 2nd on Thursday. You had talked about equestrian and father not allowing the minor child to participate in equestrian, and this was him blocking her relief activity, or something to that effect, right? That's how you feel, that's your position, that he's purposefully blocking equestrian to cause this child harm and to prevent her from having her release activity, correct? That's your position?
Mhm.
Okay, so this text message is something that he sent to you on November the 2nd. Do you remember receiving this?
I do. Again, this is a one-sided text message. What this text message does not show is that the letter that he sent to my attorney concurrently with this, that stated almost something opposite of what he stated in this text message. That was received shortly after, or maybe just a few minutes before this message, and it stated the exact opposite. So it seems that Mr. Eckles is saying one thing to one person and another thing to another.
Well, this is an actual piece of evidence, not just somebody saying something. So excuse me, 1 second. He texted you on November the 2nd, and he said, I'm open to scheduling some horse lessons if we can find time during the week that works for both of us. You received that text message, correct?
I did. And as
And
I
do
stated,
you want to revise your testimony that he is somehow interfering or blocking or against equestrian activities for your child?
I don't. Again, as I stated, there was also an email that was sent to my attorney at the same juncture, which again stated that Mr. Eckles would agree to equestrian lessons on a case-by-case basis. He told my attorney that he reserved the right to refuse to allow our daughter to attend the lessons at any juncture at any time. It is a very similar message that I've received for months. Even leading into her horseback riding just now, I attempted to work with Mr. Eckles for several months to find a mutually agreeable time, and he quite frankly refused.
Okay, do you have
I'm sorry, let me stop you. With regard to the horse riding, when did the horse riding start?
Emerson has been riding horses for about 2.5 years.
Before the divorce, during the divorce? Because I think the divorce was in 2022. Was it?
Yeah.
During the separation, during the divorce, where Mr. Eckles in the household when the horse riding started?
So the 2022 order was a modification of the existing plan. Mr. Eckles and I were never married. So it was a modification to an existing
But
plan.
were y'all living together?
No, no, Your Honor.
Okay. So so the horse riding started in what year? 2020, 2021?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. And when the horse riding started, was Mr. Eckles consulted on the horse riding?
Absolutely. It was actually, when it was initially begun, it was on shared parenting time.
It
And
was
Mr. Eckles, it was on shared parenting time. Mr. Eckles was on board. We exchanged pictures and videos and all the stuff about it. And he was very supportive at the time.
And what about, was she
Your
on
Honor, it's in their plan.
Was she on the competition team the last couple of years as well?
For gymnastics?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So she was doing what, 10 hours a week when? That's 2 years ago as well?
No, she switches. So the way that gymnastics happens, it's just like many other sports, it's a progressive sport. So, the practices are commensurate with the level. She started horseback riding lesson when she was attending gymnastics for 2 days a week for her pre-competition here. She continued.
2 years ago, what was her schedule for gymnastics?
She attended 2 days per week instead of 3 days per week.
Was it 2 hours or 3 hours?
It was 2 hours at the time.
So she was on a 4-hour plus an optional for additional support.
Yes, and that was prior to the 2022 order.
Did you do the additional support? Was she getting the hour extra at that time?
For her private lessons, yes.
Mm-hmm. So she was there 5 hours a week?
That's correct. Sometimes more. It was leading up to evaluations.
Okay. And then at some point you started going 10 hours a week.
Yes, the following year, her practices progressed to 7 hours a week. She was still attending the once a week horseback riding lesson. And then she is currently, again, just as a natural progression of her sport, she is now practicing 10 hours a week, and that 1 hour equestrian lesson has remained the same.
Mr. Eckles tell you he was concerned about how much time she was spending at the gym? At the gym?
He was concerned about her private lessons. He did not think that they were necessary, but Emerson's practice schedule is very on par with her peers, with her gymnastics peers. I think Ms. Warren mentioned that there are several gymnasts on her team that are even younger than her. So this is just a very normal schedule for a gymnast at her level. All the gyms in the area follow a very similar schedule.
Okay, so I need to stop real quick. Mr. Koger, if you would open up your video. Mr. Koger, Sam Koger, Ms. Macaluso. All right. All right, so father has had some concerns about not the actual practices, but the father had some concerns about the additional support because that he's concerned about the time she spends at the gym.
Yes.
Okay.
So she has, yeah, she's been doing the private lessons for 2.5 years now.
Right. All right then. Thank you.
May I continue, Your Honor?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And Ms. Macaluso, Emerson actually misses school for gymnastics and some of these private lessons, correct? You take her out of school for them.
Not this school year. Last year we did, but that was with Mr. Eckles' agreement.
Okay, and the principal actually intervened and was not happy about it, correct?
What she did, however, Mr. Eckles was aware of this. He was consented to these incremental private lessons. And really what it was concerned about is that the principal had actually mixed up Emerson's schedule and thought she was missing a very important section of class, and she wasn't. And once that was cleared up, the principal was back 100% on board.
Okay, but Mr. Eckles has communicated to you he thinks gymnastics is over the top and it's interfering with his parenting time. He's told you that in writing and verbally, correct?
Mr. Eckles thinks that any of Emerson's activities are an interference to his parenting time.
Okay, I'm just asking you about gymnastics specifically.
Yes.
Okay. So he doesn't want any more practices. That's you are the one who does the extra private lessons, correct? You've taken
that is on my parenting time.
Okay. And you I'm getting an echo. Weird.
I am too.
That generally means someone might be close to another person with the device open. Ms. Macaluso, is anyone near you with the device open?
No, ma'am.
What about you, Mr. Beebe?
No, we just have one main in our conference room. The echo's gone now.
Okay. Yeah, I did hear it too, but usually that's what it means. All right, you may continue.
Okay, so after you entered into your modified parenting cab in DeKalb County in September of 2022, the day equestrian at that time fell on Thursdays, which is when you have Emerson, correct? The practice for equestrian was Thursdays when you guys entered into the parenting plan, right?
Yes, because there was no gymnastics practice that day.
Okay, and then after you entered into the parenting plan, gymnastics increased, and then there was either a private lesson or another practice now on Thursday, correct?
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
So then you had to...
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to make sure we're going toward the contempt.
We're not.
I feel like
we're not. I'm even when I just thought about like what I'm writing, I was like, okay, I think that's kind of outside of where we need to be. Okay.
Because the parenting plan, the order is very clear. It includes that the child has equestrian and gymnastics in it. They've always had a disagreement about how much or whatnot, but in the order, it gives one party final decision making, and it also says the child's going to go to equestrian and gymnastics. So this has been, I just don't want to relay 4 years of arguments when we've already settled it in 2022.
That's something we can deal with at a later time, but I don't know exactly what it says with regard to the gymnastic, but it does sound like the gymnastic time is increasing. And so we got to be mindful of that as well to ensure that, because, you become if you start competing on different levels of gymnastics, you can be at the gym 25, 30 hours a week, easy. And so you do have to, I'm just saying you do have to have some consideration for it. And just out of full candor, my son does gymnastics competitively. So, and he's 25 plus hours at the gym. So I understand that. It doesn't mean necessarily I always agree with it. but you have to have some consideration for the time. That's why I'm just trying to hear it and kind of figure it out, because if that becomes an issue, I just want to have an understanding of it. So I mean, I do it, I have concerns too, but that's what he wants, so it is something you just got to be mindful of. I'm not, and I'm very objective. I'm not pushing my personal preference on anyone at all. I'm just saying I can see both sides of it. And so that's just something we just got to be mindful of. Okay. All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, I'll move on kind of in a different direction. So you had indicated on your direct that Mr. Eckles was not receptive to scheduling counseling when you initially reached out to him. Was that your testimony?
That's correct.
Okay, so this incident you're saying in your pleading happened October 25th, this kind of breakdown at the gym where she mouthed off to one of the coaches. That was kind of a stressful day for her, right?
Yes.
And after that is when you withheld the visitation and reached out to the counselor, correct?
It was the opposite. I reached out to the counselor and then withheld the visitation.
Okay, but all after October the 25th, correct?
Yes, it was literally immediately after.
Okay, and then on November the 2nd, he's texting you here. Can you see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
He's saying we need to work together, as she may not always be doing these activities until she's 18, and I want what's best for her, just as you. Maybe the counselor can help us figure out a win-win on this. I just want to be respectful of each other's time. Please, I'm good with Emerson going to counseling so we can both figure out how to not push each other's buttons and learn to improve parenting Emerson. I'm not planning to press charges at this time as long as this never happens again. So your position is you received this text message and you were testifying to the court that Mr. Eckles resisted counseling?
Yes, because I believe that we already spoke about this, you and I. And concurrently, he also sent a very different email to my attorney stating very different things. Mr. Eckles is stating one thing to me, and at the exact same juncture, on the exact same day, within 30 minutes, he is stating something very opposite to my attorney. And the aforementioned message where he was refusing therapy is from over the summer when I approached Mr. Eckles. Mr. Eckles was on therapy. And, maybe if he was at the time, we wouldn't find ourselves where we are today.
Okay, so you just, because of all that stuff in the past, you chose not to respond to this message where he's saying, I'm on board with counseling right now.
Emerson is—
Objection, Your Honor, to the tenor of the question. Keep it above board.
Okay, Mr. Bailey.
Yes, Your Honor, I sure will. So why didn't you respond to this text message when he's saying he wants to participate and maybe the counselor can help us both figure out a win-win on this?
We attempted to work directly with Mr. Eckles. We attempted to ask for mediation, several things. This is from a text message. I have asked Mr. Eckles numerous times to keep messages to email. Again, this is very one-sided. If there's ever an instance at any juncture past, goodness gracious, maybe the end of September, if it looks like that I haven't responded, I can guarantee you I have responded via email. I have requested that Mr. Eckles only speak to me via email. And it's unfortunately that he's chosen not to respect that.
Okay, so where is you have your phone with you. Where is your response to this Thursday, November 2nd text from him asking to participate in counseling with you as a win-win? Do you have it with you today?
I do not have my phone with me right now, no.
Okay. Do you recall responding to this text message in any form or fashion?
Mr. Eckles sends so many messages on a weekly basis, it is hard for me to directly say whether or not I have or have not responded.
Okay. You had indicated on your direct that you're fine with the holidays. You're asking the court to modify just that Christmas provision. Is that right? But you're okay with the other holidays? With
the holiday as they stand. As a whole, we attempted to work with, as you are both aware, we attempted to work with Mr. Eckles over a more amenable Thanksgiving schedule. Because of the stress that Emerson and her sister on that was tried to work on with Jennifer Eckles. You're both aware that Mr. Eckles originally offered to allow us to alter that parenting time. Then he pulled it back. Then he made an incremental offer. Then he pulled that back again. And then
I'm just
finally
asking you,
settled on a
I'm just
final
asking you a different question. So my question was just, you had said before, I thought you had said before, I'm okay with the holiday schedule as it is, except for Christmas. You wanted to change in that. Is that true or not true?
I think given that it's a 2-week stint out of school, I think that's probably the most important one to focus on right now.
Okay, and you're aware that Emerson just spent 10 days in a row over Thanksgiving with Mr. Eckles and had enjoyed a wonderful Thanksgiving with her, correct?
I have no idea about what my daughter experienced.
Okay, so you're not aware that they enjoyed a great week with no stress.
Objection, speculation. Your client can testify to it, but she just said she can't speculate about what did or didn't happen.
I'm going to sustain that objection.
Okay, that's fair. All right, that's all the questions I have for this witness, Judge.
So with regard to the Thanksgiving holiday, you said that was 10 days for Thanksgiving. Why was Thanksgiving 10 days? Oh, from the week, from one weekend through the week and then that weekend.
Yeah, just lined up that way that this was his year because it's an odd year and she gets, Christmas Eve and Christmas, and then he had the weekend.
Okay.
And he has 50-50 anyway, so he had the Monday, Tuesday, then he had the break.
And Ms. Caluso, when she came back, your daughter came back, were there any concerns that you had about her behavior?
Unfortunately, I haven't seen my daughter to date since that. He still has custodial time through
that's
Wednesday.
Right. She just started school so he took her to school on Monday.
This morning, yes.
He took her to school. Okay, so you haven't had a chance to talk with her to see how.
I have not.
Well, but you FaceTimed her every single day, correct?
I did FaceTime her. I expressed some of my concerns directly to Mr. Eckles on one of the occasions where Emerson seemed overstimulated. She relayed to me that she did not go to bed till 1:30 in the morning. And in fact, during that same FaceTime phone call, his own mother wasn't even aware that Emerson was in her care.
What do you mean overstimulated?
Just, when you talk to a child, how they seem overtired, they seem amped up, they seem not themselves, kind of out of sorts.
Okay, but was she crying and wanting to come home?
She did not state those things.
Okay, at any point in time in the 10 days that you FaceTime her, did she ask you to come get her?
I think she was under direct supervision for every single one of those calls. So even if she did want to do that, I don't think she would have been given the opportunity to state that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any additional questions?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Ms. Bivett, call your next witness. Call your first witness.
I would call Mr. Eckles, Your Honor.
Mr.
Well,
Eckles?
Your Honor, can I have well, that's fine. I guess I'll do it with him. I can.
Okay. You have some additional questions for your witness?
I did, Your Honor. I just wanted to clear up a couple things and kind of bring it back to Emerson if we could really quickly.
All right, very quickly, because we're running against time now.
You mentioned the 10 days for Thanksgiving. Did Mr. Eckles have Emerson for the full 10 days?
No, I had Emerson for the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday evening of the holiday.
So he actually relinquished some of his time over the Thanksgiving holiday. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You mentioned they talked about unreasonably withholding Emerson. You also filed an emergency motion with this court, correct?
That's correct.
And were you also in constant communication with Mr. Eckles?
Yes.
Okay. And just to get to why we're here, did Emerson's anxiety just appear on October 25th, or had this been going on for some time?
This has been going on for quite some time. For several.
So why hadn't you done something before?
I think it's twofold. One is you don't know the root cause of the anxiety. Sometimes kids are stressed out. They do a multiple of other things. And I attempted to work with her. I attempted to have coping mechanisms directly with her. I attempted to create a safe space at home. I attempted to work with Mr. Eckles. And none of those avenues were working for our daughter. So we needed to take the next step.
Okay. Did you suspect that Mr. Eckles was causing some of the anxiety?
I did suspect it just from Emerson's, not only her demeanor, but her own words that she stated to me.
Okay. And was October 25th the first time that Emerson cried out to a third party that wasn't you?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So previously for months, she'd only been complaining to you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. But October 25th was the first time you had a third party reach out to you about this concern as well.
That's correct.
And so you contacted a therapist and filed some legal action immediately. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then because we got so down the rabbit hole in this very, very quickly, who has final decision-making authority on activities?
I do.
And does your parenting plan order specifically state that the child shall go to all activities?
It does, and it also says that Emerson must progress in her gymnastics.
Okay. And are gymnastics and equestrian activities specifically outlined in this order?
Yes, they're specifically outlined, and Mr. Eckles and I entered it into that agreement voluntarily.
Okay. So when Mr. Eckles' attorney is saying, here's a nice text that says that let's find a time that works for both of us, who's the tiebreaker if you can't find a time?
That's me.
And does Mr. Eckles respect the court order giving you the tie-breaking authority?
No, he does not.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Just one rebuttal question directly related to that.
No, let's go to Mr. Eckles.
Okay, yes, ma'am. All right. Mr. Eckles, can you raise your right hand? Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, or nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen so you can see your parenting plan. Okay, this is a copy of your parenting plan. You see paragraph O called child's events?
Yes, I see that.
What does that second sentence say?
Neither party shall unreasonably schedule activities for the child during the other parent's parenting time, party's parenting time.
Do you think Miss Macaluso has respected this provision of the court order?
She's never respected my parenting time. No.
Have you directly communicated to her that you thought there was an imbalance going on with how much gymnastics and equestrian and activity she was doing, and that was causing her stress and anxiety?
Ever since her gymnastics increased, I have probably about 20 times told her through text message, through emails, in person. I've said it countless times that I think it's not healthy.
Have you sent her counsel an email on November the 2nd, 2023, expressing the same concern about 4 hours on Wednesdays, 3.5 hours on Thursdays, and then competing for 3 hours on Saturday and Sunday being entirely too much for a 9-year-old?
Yes, I sent her that email right after I sent Ms. Macaluso the text message that you read. That's the email that I sent her attorney, which does in fact state the same things that I told Ms. Macaluso.
And I'm gonna share my screen again. Do you recognize this post-it note? Can you see this note?
Yeah, that's what she wrote for me over Thanksgiving, and that's a bracelet that she made for me over Thanksgiving as well.
Okay, and this "Daddy, I love you," she wrote this. Is this something that you told her to do, or she just did this of her own accord?
No, she did that on her own accord, and she did it in cursive because she likes writing in cursive. That's one of her goals this year in school.
And I'm sorry, you may have said it already. I may have not heard it. When did she write this and make you this bracelet?
She made this bracelet for me maybe like 2-3 days ago. Maybe like on Friday or Saturday. And she wrote me that note the weekend prior when Thanksgiving, when that Monday, when she came back home.
How have these past 10 days gone with her?
They've been great. They've been the same way they were before Halloween, when all this went down. There has been no issues at our house whatsoever.
You heard Miss Macaluso talk about night tremors and bedwetting. Does any of that stuff occur at your home when you've got parenting time with Emerson?
Never, not once. And Miss Macaluso's never told me about it. Emerson's never said anything about it. that she's never wet the bed at my house probably since maybe she was like 5 years old, 4 years old. I don't remember the last time, but yeah.
So prior to her filing this contempt action against you for violating the order, did she reach out to you and express to you that she felt Emerson was overly stressed or anxious, and then that was somehow related to your relationship with Emerson, or that you were the cause of it?
She did text me months ago that she thought Emerson had some anxiety and thought she may need to see somebody. And I did respond to her about that. And I also asked Emerson if she was having anxiety after this. I sat down with Emerson and said, hey, are you having anxiety with anything? She was like, what does anxiety mean, Daddy? And I said, that means that if you're like worried or upset about something, is there anything you want to talk about with at home or at school? And we were sitting on my bed when she did that. And she said no. And I said, okay, I wrote her mom back. I said, I don't think she's having anxiety. But she had expressed to me a few times about going to her mom's house where she was upset because she didn't feel comfortable talking about Jesus or God at her mom's house. And she cried saying she thought her mom was going to go to hell. And that broke my heart. And I told her mom about that. But I didn't think it was a reason to take her away from her mom or file a motion or anything like that. I think that kids have issues all the time, and I've never been presented with anything directly that's happening at my house ever, not once, from her mom concerning like any issue she's having, or her coach never reached out to me once. The first time I saw that she was having issues at the gym with regard to expressing her coach having issues at home was when her coach submitted an affidavit. She never wrote me a note. She never contacted me once about this. And we had an open line of communication a week prior or a few weeks prior when I took her to a gymnastics party at her coach's house. And I said, hey, I can bring her early if you want me to, or whatever else. Her coach, we can get into that in a minute, but there was many things her coach said that were false. It was pretty disturbing to read.
Okay, well, let's talk about from your perspective. What did you observe on October the 25th when you went to the gym for gymnastics?
When I went to the gym for gymnastics, she wasn't having any issues as far as on that Monday. I'm not even sure what day that was. Let me look. I'm sorry. The 25th was Wednesday. I didn't have her on that Wednesday. I didn't go. I was going to try to go to her private lesson. I try to go to a few of her privates a month and to a few of her classes a month, but they sent us an email asking us not to attend. I was one of the few parents that was always there. But when they went to 3 hours a day, they started going to the back gym more, and parents couldn't really watch. So we all stopped going. But I did have a friend there named Reed, who has a little girl that's on our team, and we both are the only two dads usually up there watching. And I take pictures, and we can talk all about that. But yeah, up to that point, no issues. The one thing that she mentioned about me distracting her while she was on beam, I had her little sister up there, and I was lifting her little sister up so she could see through the window and watch her. And Emerson waved, and she wants both her sister and I to be at the event at practices. She tells me that all the time. I was showing her sister waved, she got in trouble. She turned around, and then her coach said something months later, not her coach, but Taylor said something to me about it, saying that I was distracting her and stuff. This is like a month or two later. And she said the date. She said when it happened, I was like, oh, that's when I had Amelia with me. And so after that happened, I stopped letting Amelia like wave or anything. I told Amelia next time I was there, I said, Amelia, don't wave at Emerson so you don't distract her. I've been completely respectful to everybody.
And these past 2 months, how has Emerson's performance been in these competitions?
So her first competition in September, maybe, she scored the lowest. She got last place at her event. And I reached out to Carly Patterson, Olympic gymnast, on Cameo, and I had her actually send a video message to Emerson to try to cheer her up. And I paid extra, which I don't have a lot of money right now. I paid extra to have her expedite it, so that way she would get it right away, because Emerson cried leaving the gym, leaving the meet. She cried upset. And I showed that video the next day. The Olympic gymnast gold medalist, talked to her for 4 minutes on video, and said how she's had bad events on beam. She was a beam specialist, all the stuff. Sorry, and I did that to cheer her up and all that, and so she started off last place in Alabama at her event. From there, she's gotten better. She got first place all around when both her sister and I were there. She's done great, except for state. She had a little rough at state. Same thing happened last year. She had a rough time at state. She's only gotten better at both gymnastics and school. She's not.
Talk to the court about school. How has school been this last month or two? How are her grades?
I went to the parent-teacher conference right after while Miss Macaluso had Emerson in her custody when it was my parenting time. She didn't show up to the school. She went on Zoom. She emailed the teacher the night before on Sunday, said, I won't be at the parent-teacher conference. And then I spoke with the teacher, showed us the report, and I have that, and it shows where she has excelled. She went from like being at one level at the beginning of the year to 95 percentile, one of the top readers in her class, and all different levels. So she's improved. She's improved in gymnastics. She's improved in education. I've taken her every day on my parenting time to education. I've allowed her to go to every gymnastics event, every gymnastics practice, except for 2 that I missed during the summer. Only missed 2 during the summer. So she has been at everything with regard to her gymnastics. I fully support her, and I've allowed her mom to take her to horse when it's on her parenting time, and a few times on my parenting time. But her mom schedules stuff excessively on my time and doesn't consider the fact that I have 2 girls and I want them to be at each other's stuff as well.
Did you get to speak to your daughter at all from October the 27th through the 31st?
Not once.
And did you send emails demanding that you have contact and that she turn your daughter over to you directly to?
4 times a day.
And then when you didn't receive any type of response, did you call the police?
I called him. Sorry.
Had you ever gone a period that long without seeing or speaking to your daughter, ever?
Not once since she was born.
Since she was born, have you had 50-50 custody of your daughter since her birth?
Except when her mom took her away September 2021, because we didn't have a formal court order. And she said that she had the right to do that because we didn't have an order, and that she wanted to move her to Florida and there's nothing I could basically do about it. And that she would pay for everything, bring her to see me once a month. She bring her to see me. I've been with her every day, every other day. We're at 223 for 5 years. And then after that, we settled on what we have. And it's just, it's not the first time she's tried to alienate me. It's been a pattern, but this time she did it against the law.
Now,
I think it's her.
When she brought up counseling and expressed wanting, when were you first made aware of this Tracy McConaughey and counseling? Because you weren't having any communication with her on the 25th, were you, when she was withholding Emerson?
She texted me that morning and said Emerson was sick and she was keeping out of school. That's the only time. That's the first time I heard anything about anything. And then Amelia's mom contacted me saying she was keeping Amelia out of school as well. And I was like, this is weird. This is really weird. It's like maybe they both got sick or ate something bad or whatever. And they cut out communication with me that day. And Taylor just said, hey, I'm taking her to see a doctor. She was in distress, all this stuff. And I said, well, let me know Wednesday. I was like, what do you mean distress? I was like, let me know when the appointment is or when I can go. I was like, what is going on? And she didn't reach back to me until after the appointment. And she told me that she was in distress. The counselor said, and that she didn't need to come back home, which the counselor emailed me and told me that was a lie. And then she took her and I went to her house and she wasn't there. That's same thing. Jen did the same thing. Amelia's mom.
Did you call the counselor to schedule a meeting to get some information directly from the counselor about what was going on?
I emailed the counselor immediately and asked the counselor what was going on. And it wasn't even the right counselor. Taylor gave me the wrong counselor's information. And so she said she forwarded it to Catherine, who's the correct counselor. And that counselor said, no, I did not tell her that she should withhold parenting time. I can't do that.
Objection, hearsay, Your Honor. You didn't let mom go into anything.
Correct. I
Up
will
there.
not. You may proceed. You cannot go into that. You can continue the testimony, but omit
I'm sorry.
what someone may have told you.
Yes, Your Honor. So I was just responding to what she had said, that the counselor told her that she could. I was just responding that counselor told me that was a game of telephone. That's what I was saying.
Well, are you supportive of working with a counselor to get to the bottom of what's causing Emerson's anxiety?
I'm 100%. She's been like 3 or 4 times already, and our court order says I can be present at counseling, and I go there because Taylor got feedback the first time, and if the counselor has any feedback, I want to be included. I don't want to be told, by Taylor or in an email by the counselor what's going on. I want to like be present if there's any feedback.
So you heard Ms. Macaluso counsel state in her opening and then her say in her testimony that you were intimidating in the lobby of the counselor's office. Could you describe what you do when you go to the counselor's office and why you go there?
Yeah, I show up to be supportive of Emerson, to let her know I'm supportive, that she's just not going every time her mommy takes her, to let her know that I'm here for her as well. And I sit there. I'll do work on my laptop or on my phone while I'm sitting there because I don't want to go sit in my car. And her mom leaves and walks to her car, which is fine. I don't talk to her mom while she's there. I don't look at her mom. I don't make any intimidating remarks or looks. Nothing.
Are you committed to working with the counselor, Emerson, and Miss Macaluso to try to get to the bottom of whether or not this child is stressed out and what might be causing it?
I'm completely fine with that. The problem that I have is that back when we went through our first custody case, when she tried taking her to Florida, she scheduled all these expensive meetings, a $3,000 psychic eval, psychoeducational evaluation for $3,000. Everything was out of network. I got stuck with like bills, and I finally told her I can't afford, like, she has a lot of money. I have very little funds to be able to spend. I've been through 2 court battles trying to maintain 50-50 of my girls. So when she schedules $180 counseling meetings once a week, like,
How much is it?
$180 a week.
And none of that's covered by insurance, correct?
None.
And I'm going to share my screen just so you can see your parenting plan. The uncovered.
I'm sorry, if you all can give me one quick moment, please.
Okay. Did you sign the release regarding Dr. McConaughey that was presented to you?
I did. When I went to the first available appointment, I signed it that day when I went up there to find out what was going on.
Okay, and that was a release that the therapist provided to you.
Yeah, they said they actually don't want to be involved in legal proceedings, and they asked me to sign it so that way it wouldn't allow them, so they couldn't be like subpoenaed or other stuff, which I was fine speaking to the therapist because she told me that well, I can't really, I won't say what she said, but because I've already said it, but yeah, I signed the release. Yes, right away, same day.
Now, talk to the court a little bit about how you discipline Emerson. And there was a comment made by a witness about she reported to one of the gym coaches, Bree, that you yell at her and tell her to shut up. Can you address that?
Yeah. So she did that obviously when she was in trouble, and I don't like, as far as yelling goes, I've yelled a few times, probably more than a few times, but it's not anything that's all the time or anything like that. And I have said shut up like twice, maybe to her, and both times I did it, she was out of the room when I said it. And I told her to come here immediately, and she sat on my lap, and I said, baby, I I apologize for saying shut up. Parents, you shouldn't say shut up to anybody. Parents shouldn't say that. And I'm sorry. I said it like 2 times. And yelling, like I'll yell like she's in the other room, or if she's not minding, and I tell her like 2 or 3 times. Her mom used to do like one, like, you know, give her 3 chances and then she'd get in trouble. And I don't think that's a good parenting method. And so like, Emerson, you need to clean that up. Or Emerson, stop, antagonizing your sister, or stop whatever she's doing. And if she didn't listen, I'll raise my voice. I don't scream. I've never screamed at her ever. I raise my voice. So, and then when I discipline her, I tell her to go to timeout, or I'll send her to her room. But usually it's timeout, because when I was growing up, I liked my room. So my parents used to send me in my room, and I liked it. So, her sister and they're sisters. They argue a lot, and when they do, I separate them and I put them in timeout. But I don't scream ever.
There was an allegation made that you withhold food from her. Have you ever used withholding food as a means of discipline, or can ever with Emerson?
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, I would never withhold food from my kids. If you want to subpoena my grocery bill, I'll show it to you and show you everything I get them. Ms. Macaluso sent me a nutritional thing from the gym that they wanted to do for their athletes, which I was like, okay, whatever. Like, there's always just like, it's getting to the point where it's just obsessive with the gym, with all the things they want them to do. But I still got on the website. I still looked at the different things that they want us to do. I buy fruit. I buy yogurt. I buy carbs. I buy complex carbs, simple carbs. I do all that stuff. I give her yogurt and usually fruit before she goes to the gym, or crackers, or peanut butter crackers, because it said they want to have carbs, and so I've never ever. Her mom sends snacks to me to make me look bad all the time. She sends.
What'd you say? She does what to make you look bad?
She'll send like bags of snacks. She literally sent me a bag. I got a picture of it. A bag of snacks, probably about like 20 different items in there at a time, for Emerson to have at my house. And I'm like, Emerson, tell me what you want. We'll get it. Like, I don't need, like, and I've told Taylor before, I said, please don't send clothes. Please don't send food. Please don't do it. I said, it makes me look bad. It makes me look like you're responsible for it, not me. And I've sent it back. And I've brought it back to her multiple times. And she continues to do stuff like that. I'll show you my grocery bill.
Did you talk to the court a little bit about it? And I'm going to share my screen. There appears to be a dispute brewing over Christmas. In your parenting plan, what's the Christmas holiday schedule for this year according to your court order?
Court order, Taylor has half the break up until like the 25th, but I agreed with her last year. I said, hey, I'm fine with that, because I think the 26th would be more fair, so that way she can travel, because that's important to her to be able to travel. So I agreed. I was like, yeah, we'll do the 26th.
So this year you have from the 26th until the return of school. Is that right?
Right. That's my only Christmas vacation time with Emerson and her sister.
Okay. And did she make a request to you via text to have some of your time so that she could take Emerson to a rehearsal, a wedding, and then spend New Year's with everyone? You see this text message here on my screen?
Yes.
We were hoping to go from.
Hoping to go from 12/29 to 1/1, so 3 nights.
Okay, so she reached out to you asking if she could have some of your parenting time, and what did you? This is your response here?
Yes.
Okay, so you didn't say no, but you offered a counter proposal saying she's welcome to go to the wedding 12/29 as long as you can bring her back or fly her back early on 12/31. That was your counter offer, right?
Right. I mean, it's already cutting in the middle of our holidays, but we already have New Year's plans for New Year's Eve with the girls, and I'm doing a little New Year's Day tea party for the girls, and we did it like a few years ago, and I really liked it, and we didn't get to celebrate New Year's the past few years together as a family, so I already had plans to do that.
And you didn't even ask for anything in exchange. You didn't even ask for any of her days in the first half of the holiday as a trade. You just offered this to try to, I guess, keep the peace?
Yeah, I mean, I would like to have like a few days in trade, but I'm not asking for Christmas holidays or anything like that. I would just, I would like for it to be fair, but I didn't ask for that at the time.
And you understand that you are under no court obligation to give her any of your time, right?
No, I care about Emerson. I want her to be able to do stuff like that, but just not on New Year's. That's my holiday, like with the girls. Like I told her she could go even the 28th. There's another text that said you can even go the 28th through the 31st if you want to. You'll be there a day early, 2 days early, be there for rehearsal dinner, be there for the wedding, and you come back Sunday and just be back by like 5 p.m. on New Year's Eve. I'll pick her up from the airport even. Like, what else can I do? Like, I'm trying to like be, and she filed spirit of whatever, saying that I'm not allowing her to spend New Year's Eve with her family when she has Christmas already. And the whole reason, this whole thing, my opinion on this, I don't know if that's allowed.
Absolutely. Why do you think she filed this whole lawsuit?
Because one, because she wants to be in control of when Emerson does whatever she wants her to do. She's always enforced her final say on everything. Not one instance has she taken my opinion when I said no to something. Has she ever agreed to anything on medical, religion, extracurricular, or educational? Ever. Not once. And so I get run over constantly. I stood up for myself and said no. I said no weekends. I said no weekends for horse lessons. And I said no. I said I'll consider Tuesdays. I said she's got a lot going on right now. I was like, I think we need a break. But I was like, I consider Tuesdays at a certain time. And she said no. The only time she has is the weekend. And she's like, so I'm scheduling on this time. I said no. I put my foot down. I knew right when I did that, she would file something. And that's what she did. And she led in with the medical expense for a retainer, which that's on the other contempt, like which was her decision, not mine. She led with that because it sounded more reasonable, probably than not taking her to horse lessons after she goes to 14 hours, 13 hours of gymnastics every week.
Have you observed any type of extremely worrisome, emergent, or urgent stress or anxiety issue in Emerson as her dad, where you would think she needs immediate medication or intervention to help address it?
I'll say that Emerson's sensitive. And she comes to me when she has problems at school, when she has problems with anything really. She's made mentions of everything. And whenever she does, like I'll try to sit down with her and explain stuff to her or make sense. I'll call the school. I've contacted the school multiple times when one boy was touching her butt. I didn't go try to kill the dad. I mean, I wasn't happy about it, but I emailed her teacher and said, hey, I said, there's a boy touching her butt. I was like, I think this needs to be addressed. And that's how I handled it. Same thing when she got pushed by a boy a few weeks ago. I emailed the teacher. I can share any of this. And I said, hey, this happened. She got pushed by a boy. I think you need to handle this. So she tells me these kind of things all the time, that there's issues. And I'm a protector of her. So like just all this stuff has just like been insane.
And do you think it's healthy for your child for your visitation to be altered or restricted in any way? Do you think that would be good for her?
Absolutely not. She's always been with me 50-50. She's with her sister 50-50. Her sister's on the same schedule. The whole reason we're in this is because the moms teamed together. They both alienated me. They both took them away during my parenting time. They used to hate each other. Now they're showing up at each other's events for the girls. They're teamed together.
Is there anything else you'd like to tell the court about this contempt action?
I'll say this, two things. I think her mom held her for 4 days, nearly 5, because that way she wouldn't have a chance to speak with me before like her filing this emergency order. So she had her my Friday through my Monday or Tuesday. I got her back Tuesday night for Halloween. That was it. And then she went back with her mom for 5 more days. So I guess she was probably hoping that this order would go through and I wouldn't have any contact with her the whole time. So after that, after she came back Tuesday, Halloween night, after we went out celebrating or trick-or-treating, which that was even, Emerson was like, are we gonna have the Halloween party we're supposed to have this weekend? I said, no, you weren't here, baby. We didn't have it. You're helping me put it together. Are we gonna have the haunted house? no, baby, you weren't here. So we canceled it. We canceled everything we were supposed to do that weekend because Taylor took her to the mountains. She drove her literally up to Helen, Georgia, stayed in a hotel for 4 days. So she told me when she got back, she's like, no, we stayed in the hotel. I was like, did you do anything? She said, went mini golfing. I was
I'm
like,
sorry,
okay.
what'd you do? What'd she do?
Took her to play mini golf. And then I said, baby, did you not want to come to my house? And she said, no. At first, she didn't open up about anything. And then after we talked for a little bit, she opened up. She said, Daddy, sometimes you yell at me and it makes me sad. And I said, baby, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that. And it hurt me to hear her say that, but I never knew that, that it upset her like that. And so we talked and had a heart to heart. And I said, I wanted to see you the whole time, all weekend. And she said, you did? And I said, yeah, baby. I was like, I reached out to your mommy all the time, all weekend long, trying to get a hold of you. And she said, mommy said you didn't text her. I said, I didn't text your mommy because she told me not to text her. Just like she said earlier in the testimony. She told me not to text her. She told me to email her. And nowhere in our parenting plan does it say I can FaceTime on my own parenting time. I emailed her 4 times a day. I told her, I contact your mom. I was trying to get a hold of you, baby. Every day. And she's like, you want to see me? I was like, yes. And we started crying. And I told her multiple times that I want to see her. She said, I was so sad, Daddy. I want to talk to Amelia too. And mommy tried calling her when she was with her mom during my parenting time. And her mom was driving somewhere and she couldn't talk. So she was taking her away as well. I mean, it's just sick. It's completely sick. And so I said, is there anything you want to tell me about like when you're with your mommy? And she said, there was one thing that was weird. And I said, okay, what was it? She said, mommy asked me if I take the punishment for Amelia. And I was like, okay. And I was like, what do you like? I was like, what did you say? She said, no. And she's like, but then mommy said, Emerson, did you? And that's what her mom does to get her to go to school or do other stuff. She pushes her like that. So Emerson straight up told me, I was like, what are you talking about? You take the punishment for Amelia. I was like, and she was like, mommy told me to say that. So that was sick right there. It was sick that she withheld her from talking to me. I cried probably for like 10 minutes with her about it. And I said, baby, I'm so sorry. And the whole time, I thought Emerson didn't want to see me. That's the worst part. I thought she didn't want to see me. And she was waiting on me to call the whole time. And what am I supposed to say to her? She didn't want to see me if I don't call her. All I did, every email I sent to her mom, hey, when can I pick up Emerson? Hey, when can I pick up Emerson? I've called the police. When can I pick up Emerson? Tell me where Emerson is, please. Let me pick her up. When can we meet? Every single day. If I did that, Judge, I would be in jail. I would be in jail if I did that as a father to a woman. I did not press charges. I was told I could. It was a misdemeanor. She had left the state. It was a felony. And I told the officer 2 times. I told her initially, I don't want to press charges. And then when she called me again to close the report over Thanksgiving, she said, I need to ask you this one more time. Do you want to press charges? And I said, no. I said, I just want this to be a deterrent so she doesn't do it again. And what I'm asking the court.
Objection, Judge. This is getting to be a pretty long narrative.
Okay, ask the next question. I agree. Ask the next question.
That was the last question, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, cross.
All right, Mr. Eckles, you and I have emailed quite a bit together, but first time we're seeing each other on a Zoom. I want to go back through just a little bit of your testimony here.
Sure.
Did I understand your testimony correctly that you were offering time for New Year's Eve and not even asking for makeup time? Is that your testimony?
No, I didn't ask for it initially, but I did want makeup time. I'm not going to give away time.
So you agree you did, to correct the testimony, you did ask for makeup time, correct?
No, I didn't at that time, no.
Or you haven't asked for makeup time, is that correct?
No, because we haven't come to an agreement.
Okay, so is it your testimony as you're sitting here right now that you did not ask for a swap to get time at the beginning of Emerson's break?
No, I didn't, not yet.
All righty. Judge, may I share my screen, please?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
Okay, you're ready.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So do you see the New Year's, what I've titled New Year's Eve swap? Do you see this?
I see it.
Okay. Can you tell me whether you want to revise your testimony, Justin? Because it looks like at the end you'd say your last or second to last sentence, I'd just like to swap for a few days at the beginning of her Christmas break. So is it your testimony today that you did, in fact, you weren't just generously giving mom time, you were asking for a swap. Is that correct?
Yes, I didn't state the days. Yes.
Okay, thank you. You admitted that Emerson actually got last place at a recent event, gymnastics event. Is that correct?
At our first event of the season. Yeah, back in September.
Okay. Back in September, she got last place. Okay. You said she's doing great at school, but isn't it true that her academics have actually dropped from the 95th percentile to the 85th percentile this semester?
Not from what I read at the parent teacher conference. They haven't dropped at all. I mean, maybe you have the report and you can share it with me, but from what I remember, no.
Okay, pull that up in just a moment. Both of the mothers of your children have filed legal action against you. Is it your testimony that they have, did I understand it correctly? They have teamed up against you. Is that your testimony today?
Yes, from what I understand, it started in the summer.
Okay. So what have you done to demonstrate that, you know, you admitted you raise your voice and yell on at least a couple of occasions.
Right.
So what have you done to try to make sure that if you are yelling at your kids, it's not so bad?
I've sat down and spoken with, after I found out about the issues Emerson was having, I sat down and spoke with her about it. I talked to her about yelling. I said that I apologize that it's, you know, I call it raising my voice, but she calls it yelling. I said, I apologize. I had no idea that it was having that impact on you. I said, I will try harder to not be that way. I get upset when you don't mind. And I asked her the other day, I said, how have I been doing with this the past few weeks? And I was like, have I yelled any? She said, no. And I said, okay.
Okay. So you're talking to a 9-year-old about this. Is that correct?
Yes. The same 9-year-old her coach was talking to her. Yeah.
Okay. Have you taken a parenting seminar?
Yes. I took one when we went through our original custody thing, and I took notes and I have the book still.
Since 2020, have you taken a parenting seminar?
I think I took it in 2020.
Okay. Since 2021, have you taken the advanced parenting seminar?
I'm not really sure what that is. I don't believe so.
Okay. Have you started any co-parent counseling with an individual therapist for yourself?
For myself, yeah, I went to the initial session with her therapist to let her know what was going on and to talk to her about what I could do if there's anything I need to do to change.
But what I'm saying is you've got two mothers claiming that you're not doing a great job parenting these two little girls. So have you met with any therapist one-on-one, or have you only met with attorneys?
Your Honor, I'll just object to this line of questioning because there's no.
I'm gonna sustain that objection.
Okay. Now, you said, you testified, if I understood correctly, that mother never said anything about anxiety. That the first time you heard anything about anxiety was basically on October 27th. Is that correct?
That's false. No, if you go
Okay,
back,
so how long
go
has
back
she been? My question for you is how long because as I understood your testimony, this came out of the blue for you. So what I'm trying to understand is, isn't it true that mother had been trying to talk to you about Emerson's anxiety for months?
Her mom mentioned it a few months ago one time, and when she did that, it triggered like the thought of her taking her to somewhere out of network and spending all this money. And that's when I spoke with Emerson about it and said, Emerson, are you having any problems? Is there any concerns? And I'm fine with her going to counseling. I think we should go to co-parenting counseling, really. I think that would mean more than anything. But
Okay.
her mom never made me aware of any direct issues that Emerson was having. She just said she thinks she's having anxiety, which I told Emerson about that day.
So is it your testimony today that going back to November 10th, 2022, it's not your recollection that going back to November 10th, 2022, mother's been bringing up anxiety that Emerson seems to be having?
My recollection is maybe she brought it up one time.
Okay. So let's go through what happened on October 27th. You recall that at 10:51 a.m. you got an email from me, correct?
October 27th. What day was that? Friday? Yeah.
That's a Friday morning at 10:51.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Sure. I don't have the email.
And do you recall that you testified previously that you had no idea what was going on, but do you recall that my email specifically informed you that the mother was taking your daughter to the doctor and would be in touch about next steps and professional therapeutic recommendations? Do you recall that?
On that Friday?
Friday the 27th.
That was how many days after it happened? Yeah, that's the first time I got told anything about it when you emailed me. Well, no, her mom texted me that morning, said she was out sick because she was having an upset stomach, which Emerson told me was a lie as well. So she was never.
So to make sure I understand, you've been asking Emerson involving her in this litigation quite a bit. Is that correct? You've been fact checking with Emerson. Is that correct?
I've been called out by her coach and her mom, and I was asking her what was going on.
Okay. So you've been fact checking the allegations with your child, correct?
Not all the allegations, no.
Okay. And do you think that's a good idea, sir?
I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do when our daughter's taken away for like 4 days. I don't really know what to do when her coach that we take her to gymnastics with is only talking to her mom and not me. I don't know how to even handle that. Like, I don't know what to do because I feel like I'm being left on the outside of everything. So no, I don't really know what to do.
Okay. But look, I tried to get in that line of questioning about what else you could do. You sent a text to the coach that she did not respond to, correct?
Yeah. Do you have a copy of that?
Okay. I do not. 2, did you go to the gymnastics gym to try to talk to the owner, Miss Lindy Polk?
Yeah, I did. When her mom said that I was distracting Emerson. This is the first time I heard about it. Coaches, nobody at the gym told me. She said I was interfering with the gym staff.
Okay. Now, on October 27th at 10:51, I emailed you, correct?
And then
on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And then at 4:35, Taylor emails you after you say you've called the police. Is that correct?
My pickup time was at 3:30. So I don't know. I don't have it in front of me, but if you want to share it, I can look at it and tell you, confirm it.
Okay. So to make sure I understand, even though you've been informed at 10:51, when you got there at 3:30, your reaction was to call the police, even though you were told that you weren't going to get the child. You decided to call the police at 3:30, correct?
I was told by who I wasn't going to get the child.
When I emailed you that my client would be in touch about visitation because she has an emergency action that she'd filed.
I was told by you. Are you asking if I was told by you that I couldn't see our daughter because of that?
I'm trying to follow the chain of events. At 10:51 a.m., I emailed you and let you know that my client would be in touch after meeting with a therapist.
Yes.
You still showed up for the 3:30 exchange, correct?
Yeah, because that's my parenting time. And there was no order that suggested otherwise.
Okay. And then you called the cops, correct?
Yes. And I met them down the street. So that way Emerson wouldn't see the cops if they were home because I didn't want to cause a scene.
Okay. And then at 4:35, mother emails you and asks you to contact McConaughey Therapy, correct? Or McConaughey Counseling.
You're not really showing me anything, so I can't confirm that.
All right, let me
look at it.
Let me show my screen. Make sure I have this over here. Okay. Do you recognize these emails back and forth?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So to make sure I'm following the chain of events, you call the police when she's not there at 3:30. And is it your testimony as you sit here today that the police were down the street and not directly in front of the house?
Correct. I met them down the street, and then the officer went up to the house to knock on the door to make contact.
Okay, so if we have somebody to counteract that, you would say that person was lying, that the cops, or you would say whoever would testify that the cops were right in front of your house is not telling the truth?
The cops were what?
So the cops never came to the house, is what you're saying?
No,
They
the
met
cops
down
came-
the street.
I just said the cops came to the house. They rang the ring
Okay.
and left a business card 2 times.
Okay. So then you called the cops, and then Miss Macaluso emails you and says that she's following the recommendation of the therapist. This is the second email here, and asks you to contact Tracy McConaughey. Is that true?
Yes, that's what she sent me. Yes.
Okay. And then the next email, you're saying this is out of left field and Emerson has never expressed any issues with me. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. But you admitted that she brought up the anxiety before. You just had no idea it was coming from you, allegedly. Is that correct?
Emerson never brought up anxiety. I asked Emerson directly if she was having anxiety. She said she didn't know what anxiety meant. And I told her what it meant. And she said, no, Daddy.
Well, sir, let's talk about that. Do you think a 9-year-old should even know what the word anxiety is and should be able to self-diagnose? I mean, there are 40-year-olds that don't know what it is. Wouldn't you agree?
I disagree. I would say a 9-year-old's pretty intelligent. And if she's having problems like you're saying she's having, she should be open to feeling comfortable to talk to her parents about it. So her mom said she's having anxiety. So I didn't know how else to explain that. I said, baby, are you having a problem? Are you having any issues?
Okay. So let's follow that for a second. A 9-year-old child is reporting that a parent is yelling at them, screaming at them. They don't want to go to that parent's house. Do you think that child is going to be completely honest when interrogated by that parent?
Right. I'm not objecting.
I'm sorry. It's 5:10. And at this point, we've gone way over what the court anticipated. So I think I've gotten the information that the court needs to make a decision. I think you kind of had Mr. Eckles on cross-examination. And just kind of frankly, I just haven't heard anything that would suggest we're in an urgent emergency situation. And so I'm going to stop the hearing at this juncture. At this point, what I've heard is that he might have been screaming at the child. He's already indicated once he realized that, he started addressing it and making some changes to his behavior. And there's just really at this juncture nothing else. A child can have anxiety for a multiplicity of reasons. And so I think we should continue counseling. At best, I think there should be some co-parenting counseling done as well. But as far as stopping visitation, I'm not going to do that at this juncture. So it looks as if the counseling she's going to is $180. It's outside of network. It's on Ms. Caluso unless she wants to change and get someone in network, then of course it'd be split. I think that is reasonable to do. I know that sometimes making transition is not the best thing, but she's fairly young, and I don't think it makes any sense for someone to pay $360 out of pocket with no intention of doing some sort of changeover, because it's kind of expensive. And I haven't heard anything honestly that made me think, that's necessary, because that's something that she cannot find in a regular plan. For example, if she had some type of eating disorder and you were getting someone who's really good at it and they're not in network and it just makes sense, I would say, okay. Or someone who's renowned in that particular field and you got some severe issues, but generic potential anxiety, I think you should either find someone else who's in network, or you're gonna have to eat that cost yourself, unfortunately. So I just haven't heard anything that would put me in an urgent state where I want to do something immediately. So at this juncture, I'm going to deny your request. We'll deal with your contempt later. The only other issues and try to figure out where we go from now. It does look like that, continuing therapy and doing some co-parenting might be the route that we'll be going in the end. I'm not prepared to make those decisions right now. I just haven't heard anything that has placed the court in a mind that is urgent. I do accept what our Miss Carly stated earlier, but it could very well be that, as she said, her dad yelling at her caused her some concern. Everybody kind of parent differently, everybody has different personalities, but Mr. Eckles has indicated he's starting to address it, and he didn't realize that, she was ultra sensitive in that manner in which she told him. He started to address it. So at best, I'm going to tell Mr. Eckles that he is not to scream at the child, no punishment until we kind of get this issue worked out and try to figure out what counseling and provisions we're going to put into place. That's the order of the court.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I'm assuming the remaining contempt allegations in the other contempt, because we did file a counterclaim.
Yeah, we'll take care of those. And like I said, I'm not indicating that I'm making a ruling on count 3. Her position is there's some other issues there. I'm not making a decision on those things. I'm just telling you for right now, there's nothing that I need to do right now to protect her other than indicate for Mr. Eckles not to scream at her, to continue her therapy. I'm asking Ms. Macaluso to consider changing the therapy so it'll be less finances on her. I'll let her make that final decision. But that's the extent. So right now, I don't find there to be an emergency where I need to do anything. The contempt will be scheduled. How in what time frame it works for the calendar. So I'm not really sure. Probably that might be something we might be looking at in January, maybe even February. I'm not really sure how far we are in contempt matters. That'll be something Ms. Marshall will be able to send to you shortly. But if anything, of course, different or new comes up, you can let me know. I don't know how these 10 days went, but it sounds as if Ms. Macaluso had the opportunity to speak with her daughter in the 10 days, and she wasn't death-defying, saying, "Come get me." So I think we might be dealing with somebody who's transitioning. There could be a multiplicity of reasons, and I just haven't seen anything that made me think it's dad. So for those reasons, I'm not gonna do anything other than schedule this case for a full hearing. Thank you. Y'all take care.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you.